Chapter 4400. Not good. At this moment, Bei Xian suddenly realized that she was in danger. She did not dare to be careless. Her frozen arm suddenly broke from the middle. Her body flashed and she was about to escape. Unfortunately, her arm was not broken. The Ice Worm King moved and instantly crossed all the layers of ice to attack the part of her arm that was not frozen. The ice layer did not exist in the eyes of the Ice Worm King. Humph. Bei Xian coldly snorted. This cold snort actually trembled because as the Ice Worm King approached, Bei Xian already felt that the space around her was filled with unbearable coldness. This was a situation she had never encountered in her life. Boom. Bei Xian was also a decisive person. Seeing this, her entire body immediately turned into fragments of light. She ignored the parts of her body that were already frozen and rushed in all directions. However, when Bei Xian flew, she sadly discovered that even the 7 colored threads of light were much slower in this extremely cold space. Compared to her previous teleportation, her flying speed was comparable to that of a snail's. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Bei Xian cursed 3 times in a row. She watched as the light around her slowly drifted and then slowly solidified. A kind of coldness began to permeate from the surface of her body into her heart. This permeation was also strange. Bei Xian felt that this coldness also carried Xiao Hua's smile as it invaded her body bit by bit. This made her feel ashamed and unable to show her face. Did I do something wrong? Bei Xian suddenly felt a sense of regret. However, in just a moment, another kind of fear rose from the bottom of her heart. This was a kind of warning, a kind of alertness that the main body was being approached by someone. Not good. I can't let Xiao Hua get close to the main body. Bei Xian's heart was filled with despair. Weng weng. The 7 colored light around Bei Xian began to forcefully revolve, and within the 7 colored light, there was an additional layer of blood-red light. Boom boom boom. The light formed a huge vortex, and from the void, countless 7 colored light fell down. The entire light suddenly exploded violently outside the ice layer. The Ice Worm King naturally also sensed the danger, but it only teleported a few miles and then flapped its wings and rushed into the ice layer. The dense milky white color instantly enveloped the 7 colored light. Layers of ice threads began to condense at the edge of the light layer that was about to explode. Little ice. Xiao Hua did not know how to address the Ice Worm King. He casually said, "Back off." The Ice Worm King instantly understood Xiao Hua's meaning, but it did not retreat even half an inch. This little guy is quite strong. Xiao Hua faintly smiled and waved his hand. Rumble. An enormous palm-sized thunderbolt appeared out of thin air. This thunderbolt was divided into 4 layers, and each thunderbolt was formed by 4 threads of lightning. These 4 threads of lightning were the Yin lightning of 3 corpses, the true lightning of 5 Qi, the 9 heavens divine lightning, and the nether devil lightning. For lightning threads at the same time, perhaps only Xiao Hua's main body could use them. When this lightning hand appeared, the lightning actually gave birth to the power of life and death. This power of life and death was extremely weak, but the Tao of life and death was still the head of the 3,000 grand Taos. When Xiao Hua first set foot on the Tao of immortality, because of his benevolence, his heart was touched by the sight of life and death. From there, he glimpsed the outline of the Tao of life and death. Later on, as his cultivation deepened, his understanding of the Tao of life and death became more and more profound. However, the Tao of life and death was one of the 3,000 grand Taos and the head of the grand Taos. Not to mention the cultivators of the mortal world, even the immortals of the immortal world would not be able to use the Tao of life and death in their spells. Xiao Hua was blessed by the heavens and cultivated the art of lightning. What was special about him was that he had the Thunderbolt Immortal, Wenxiu, Shi, and Wu clones. These 4 clones cultivated the art of lightning of Taoism, Confucianism, Devil, and Soul cultivators respectively. Thunder had always been the will of the world and represented life and death. Because of this, Xiaohua was able to vaguely see life and death under the power of the 4 types of lightning. What was more special was that Xiaohua had the inside of space and could control the origin power of the netherworld. All of these fortuitous encounters allowed him to faintly mix a trace of the power of life and death into his lightning arts. In other words, this trace of the power of life and death was a high and mighty divine ability in the mortal world. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's Tao of life and death was too weak and could not guarantee success in a fight. As long as the opponent could dodge before the Tao of life and death fell, this near-invincible divine ability would be ineffective. At this moment, Bei Xian was frozen in space by the Ice Worm King. Although she wanted to self-detonate and use the power of self-detonation to escape danger, her body was unable to move. Seeing Xiaohua's hand of thunder coming down, the Tao of life and death had already relied on the power of thousands of lightning to land on Bei Xian's illusory body. It was even more powerful than the Ice Worm King's ice seal. When the lightning fell, the Tao of life and death instantly penetrated through the layers of indestructible ice and solidified the huge whirlpool of light. Each of the whirlpools was like a dazzling ice flower with 7 colored threads of light that were abnormally clear. Not only that, but when the Tao of life and death passed through the light and landed on Bei Xian's illusory body, it was like rain pouring down. The 7-colored light faded at a visible rate and turned into black and white in just a moment. Ah! Bei Xian was shocked and her heart was filled with thousands of doubts. What divine ability is this? Just as Bei Xian's doubts arose, the black and white spread to her illusory body again. Not only was the 7-colored brilliance erased, but the thousands of vitality were also annihilated in an instant. It was like a blooming peach flower withering under the power of heaven and earth. The black and white within 1,000 miles slowly turned back into the energy of heaven and earth and disappeared without a trace before the ice seal spread again. Seeing Bei Xian's illusory body and 7-colored halo being destroyed by the hand of thunder, even Xiaohua himself was shocked. However, at this moment, a huge rumbling sound came from the depths of space. Demon Sovereign Shi's angry roar and Bei Xian's battle cry could be faintly heard. Xiaohua did not have time to think too much. He waved his hand and said with a smile, "Little ice, come back." Weng weng. The Ice Worm King ignored the layer of ice and instantly landed in front of Xiaohua. It flapped its wings and circled around Xiaohua a few times as if it was asking for credit. "Not bad, not bad." Xiaohua smiled. He opened his mouth and shot out a beam of light, which landed on the Ice Worm King's body. The light dimmed, and the Ice Worm King was sucked into his body. After that, Xiaohua glanced around. The 7-colored halo around him had become very sparse. Presumably, Bei Xian had been attracted by Demon Sovereign Shi and was too busy to notice this place. Hee. The corners of Xiaohua's mouth curved upward as he sneered in his mind. He knew his plan had worked. As long as he could kill as many of Bei Xian's illusory bodies as possible, he would be able to force her true body out, or destroy the 7-colored halo shell world. With a sway of his body, Xiaohua flew towards the source of the sound. Although he had not teleported yet, his flying speed was already much faster than before. However, before Xiaohua could fly 1,000 miles away, he sensed something again and turned to look. He saw that Reverend Yun had revealed his dragon body, with rosy clouds gushing out from under his body. He too was flying towards the depths of the void. "How's the situation, fellow Taoist?" Xiaohua asked with a smile on his face. "I have killed more than half of Bei Xian's illusory bodies, but when I was about to unleash my attack, she suddenly vanished. After that, I heard the sound of fighting between Bei Xian and that devil spirit boy. I guess he must have found her true body." Bei Xian dared not to be distracted, so she kept her incarnation. Reverend Yun answered coolly. "Fellow Taoist, why can't you wield the Pangu axe?" Xiaohua asked again. Reverend Yun nodded regretfully and answered, "Yes. The Pangu axe is a divine item, and even with Ai's ability, I still can't wield it freely. I'm sorry to disappoint you, fellow Daoist. It's not really a disappointment. Xiao Hua waved his hands smilingly. If fellow Daoist can wield the Pangu axe now, it would no longer be the Pangu axe. Besides, if we could wield it freely, wouldn't we be invincible in the world? That's true. Reverend Yun laughed and said, wouldn't that be boring? Fellow Daoist, please wait for me. Even as he spoke, the Celestial moved his body and chased after Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua asked a few questions, and found that the situation of the Celestial was similar to that of Reverend Yun. The Celestial complained, fellow Daoist, you have to find me a suitable magical item. I can easily deal with ordinary cultivators with my bare hands, but for an expert like Bei Xian, I can't easily deal with her without a magical item. Besides, although the bones of the Celestial are useful, I can't always use them. After all, they don't belong to I, and I can't refine them. Don't worry, fellow Daoist. Xiao Hua replied helplessly, fellow Daoist, please refine the two essences first. Perhaps you'll have some luck in the future. All right. The Celestial did not want to push Xiao Hua too much. Following him, Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun formed a triangle and flew into the depths of the space. After flying for several tens of thousands of miles, Xiao Hua saw that the space in front of them was filled with countless colorful light patterns that looked like layers of rainbow bridges, covering the entire heaven and earth. Narrowing his eyes, he pointed his finger at them and said, fellow Taoists, please take a look. Previously, as far as our eyes could see, this space was nearly boundless, and even our divine will could not reach far. But now, after we've killed a few of Bei Xian, shadows, the light in this space has weakened, and Bei Xian, ability to control the spatial barrier has been greatly reduced. If I'm not mistaken, these rainbow bridges are the shells of Bei Xian, true form, and the light in the spatial barrier originated from them. If fellow Daoist Yun's Pangu axe can be used, we can break the wall and get out of here. That's right. Reverend Yun nodded and said, I can smell a strong primitive aura from these light bridges. Even without the Pangu axe, we can still fight our way out. The Celestial yelled and increased his flying speed. Chapter 4401. There was no need for Xiao Hua and the others to search carefully, as the billowing fiend energy and blood stains had already enveloped an area of several hundred miles under the Bridge of Light. All the fiends in the fiend energy were roaring crazily, shooting out beams of colorful light that looked like flying swords from time to time. When the fiend energy was killed, the light beams were tainted by the fiend blood. Wave after wave, it looked like the cycle of reincarnation. Boom! Just as Xiao Hua was about to rush forward to help, a huge rumbling sound came from where the Bridge of Light was, and then a ball of scarlet fire that was like a scorching sun flew out from the Bridge of Light. Wherever the fireball passed, the space collapsed, and an incomparably ferocious aura was unleashed from it, rushing toward the fiend energy. Pa 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 pa. Wherever the flames passed, light and shadow flashed past. The billowing devil chi was extinguished by the fireballs, and the torrential devil blood was also burned dry. Hordes of devils wailed and fled towards Xiao Hua and the others. Even Lord Shi revealed himself in the fiend energy in a somewhat sorry state. Demon Lord Shi's body expanded like a demon god. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched the fireball. Boom! The fireball's flames were extinguished, and Demon Lord Shi's demon fist was smashed into pieces. However, the fireball spun and actually managed to reduce the majority of Demon Sovereign Shi's strength. Furthermore, the force of the collision did not decrease in the slightest, and it continued to smash towards Demon Sovereign Shi. Good heavens! Lord Shi yelled as he fled toward where Xiao Hua and the others came from, and the billowing fiend energy was retracted as well. Bei Xianer, are you trying to kill your husband? Don't worry, fiend spirit. We're here to help you. The Devas had been preparing for a long time. When they saw Lord Shi was defeated, they gave a loud roar and opened their mouths, shooting out 3 beams of light toward the fireball. Hee hee. Reverend Yun smiled. A ripple came out from his dragon horn, sealing the space behind Lord Shi. Layers of golden dragon symbols emerged from the space. Boom! The light pillars and dragon patterns blocked the sphere, creating a deafening sound. The space within hundreds of miles was destroyed by the sphere, collapsing. Countless dragon patterns and light pillars were destroyed by this strange sphere. After looking at the round ball again, an enormous seven-colored light pillar that could almost split the heavens and the earth was revealed. This light pillar trembled slightly, and the surrounding space trembled and distorted. A kind of godlike majesty came from this light pillar, enveloping the space within 1,000 miles. Damn it, this thing is really powerful. Reverend Yun was shocked when he saw the dragon marks being killed by the absolute power. What kind of magical treasure is this? 1. Seeing that the light beam was ineffective, the celestial being's 6 arms immediately reached into the void, wanting to block the sphere. Unfortunately, this place was already close to Bei Xian's body, and the space was sealed by her. How could the celestial being enter the void? Roar. The celestial felt quite embarrassed and roared, "I'll help you." Then, the celestial being flew up and charged toward Lord Shi. His 6 arms turned into hundreds of white bones and smashed toward the sphere. Boom! 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 The sphere was stopped by the celestial being's attack, but the celestial being was knocked back 100 miles. Puff! Seeing an opportunity, Xiaohua released the Ice Worm King again without hesitation. Layers of ice instantly froze the sphere, and Xiaohua waved his hand again, unleashing a thunderous hand mixed with the power of life and death. Humph! At this moment, Bei Xian's cold voice was heard coming from the towering light pillar. "I've suffered a loss once. How can I not learn from my mistakes?" As he spoke, the sphere spun once again, and a crack appeared in the frozen space nearby. Countless dense rainbow-colored rays of light gushed out from the crack, and the sphere suddenly disappeared before Xiaohua's thunderous hand could land on it. The sphere disappeared, and the thunderous hand naturally missed. However, after Xiaohua withdrew his hand, he waved his hand, and a powder fell in front of him. Xiaohua looked at it, and his face became solemn. He transmitted his voice, "Fellow Taoists, this is Bei Xian's life pearl produced in the 7-colored halo shell world. Not only is it extremely heavy, it's also incomparably sturdy. I'm afraid Bei Xian has to rely on this life pearl to make up for her fatal weakness of softness." That's right. Lord Shi Fei came over, and his face was still in shock. He said, "Bei Xian's life pearl is very powerful. Not only can the 7-colored brilliance destroy all things of the 5 elements, the holy aura hidden inside is also the nemesis of my demon race. Also, this object seems to be extremely heavy, and the space is unable to bear it. Previously, I followed the aura of Bei Xian's bloodline to this place. I thought I could achieve something before Big Brother, but I didn't expect that this object would appear out of nowhere and almost injure me. Although this object is powerful, it can't reach far." Reverend Yun narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance, where the natal pearl was wheeling like a star near the huge light pillar. "If we don't get close to Bei Xian's true form, she can't do anything to us," said Reverend Yun. "The problem is," the heaven being shouted, "if we don't kill Bei Xian, how are we going to break this life pearl's shell? That pearl is already so powerful, it seems like we can only use the Pangu axe to break her shell." "Of course, we can wait here with Bei Xian, Xiaohua said with a gloomy face, "but Feng Wu, Taoist Wu, and Wensu can't wait, and neither can the 200,000 disciples of my fortune gate. It looks like we can only take a risk." "Take a risk, take a risk. Kill this monster," the heaven being shouted. "Human." Bei Xian's cold voice rang out again, "I admire you, and I admire your helpers. All of you are very powerful. But, even if you can wait until you get here and find my true body, you are still no match for me. If you surrender obediently, I will only kill all of you. I won't make things difficult for those humans outside, and I won't kill the 200,000 disciples you brought here. Otherwise, not only will I kill all of you, I will also kill the 200,000 humans. I will even order the 6 great saints of the Great Sage Palace to lead the demon army to invade the hidden immortal continent and kill all the human cultivators. You are indeed a big-breasted but brainless woman. Xiao Hua said coldly, you are forcing me to kill you. Hee, at this point, what else can you do? Bei Xian burst out laughing, don't think that your thunder technique is very powerful, and that you can kill my incorporeal body. That little worm of yours is just a little worm in front of me. Boom. 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 The previously frozen space of King Ice Worm collapsed under the raging 7-colored light tide. Even though some of the spaces were not unsealed, they were still shattered by the light tide. Seeing the light tide coming at him from all directions, the prime pearl that looked like a star also moved. A suffocating force came rushing over, completely suppressing Xiao Hua. Facing such an attack, Xiao Hua did not panic. He waved his hand and said, fellow Taoists, let's do it. In an instant, Reverend Yun, the heaven being, and the exalted fiend all understood Xiao Hua's intention, and they all burst out laughing. Reverend Yun moved his body and recited the heavenly dragon spell, causing the energy waves on his dragon horns to soar into the sky and meet the light tide. Meanwhile, the exalted fiend formation roared and activated it, sending billowing fiend energy toward the light tide like a tide. Seeing the 3 doppelgangers move, Xiao Hua smiled coldly and raised his hand to slap the top of his head. Boom! Within the soaring multicolored light, the 108th tribulation scattered nascent souls flew out according to the formation they had arranged in advance in his lower dantian. As soon as they landed in the air, they immediately set up a simple golden crow immortal slaying demon formation. Ah! Bei Xian immediately noticed the formation. She cried out in surprise, you! How can you use your Kunlun mirror? Xiao Hua smiled coldly and did not answer Bei Xian's question. Instead, he ordered, fellow Taoists, kill this demon. Yes. 108 nascent soul cultivators answered in unison, then performed an incantation gesture. Gradually, the entire demon formation flashed brightly and transformed into a huge gold crow. Xiao Hua already had a plan when he first came out of Bei Xian's big 7-colored halo shell world. He knew that inside this barrier, all spatial artifacts couldn't be used. Moreover, his lower dantian was a part of Xiao Hua's body and didn't belong to space. Therefore, the group of 8th rank scattered nascent souls inside his lower dantian could come out. Therefore, when Xiao Hua flew out of the dimension and asked the heaven being to enter, he also kept 36 nascent soul cultivators in his lower dantian, so that they could be of help at a critical moment. Even the Ice Worm King had to be sent into Xiao Hua's dantian from within the space. Damn it! Bei Xian cursed under her breath when she saw the formation was taking shape, leaving her no time to react. The towering beam of light emitted a dazzling light, illuminating the space within several hundred miles as if it was daytime. Suddenly, a stream of light that looked like a mirror appeared in front of the light tide that was lunging towards the heaven being, Reverend Yun, and Lord Fiend. The light tide fell into the stream of light and disappeared. As for the prime pearl, it had also vanished after shattering the space within 100 miles. The heaven being, Reverend Yun, and Lord Fiend were slightly taken aback, and they halted in midair. However, right after they stopped moving, the space within 10,000 miles in front of them had undergone a drastic change, as if it was going to destroy the heaven and earth. Not to mention the fact that the space within a radius of 10,000 miles was distorted and the light and shadows were torn apart, not to mention the fact that the rainbow tide was spinning madly within the space, creating huge whirlpools that were annihilated without any pattern. Not to mention that the natal pearl was also trembling, and the light and shadows on its surface were creating layers of illusions. Above the dimension, the thick beam of light in the colorful heaven and earth was expanding rapidly. It flew out from the heaven and earth like a giant python, whizzing and spinning wildly outside the dimension. As the beam of light spun, the seven-colored light tide poured out from the heaven and earth like the Milky Way, falling into the dimension that had undergone a drastic change. The unusual change in the great rainbow shell realm had attracted the attention of all the people in the sacred realm of thousand demons. Even golden-winged great rock and the other great saints of the demon race were struck dumb when they saw what was happening. Chapter 4402. Seven-star Great Saint Feng Wu was originally chatting with Taoist Wu, Wen Chu, and the other great saints of the demon race. Suddenly, the ground shook a few hundred miles away from them. The night in the sky began to settle, and layers of darkness fell like rain and frost. Following which, a vast aura rushed out from the ground, shooting straight into the night sky. When the aura covered thousands of miles, a huge shell was revealed from the ground. The terrifying aura was emitted from this shell. Looking at the surroundings of the shell, seven-colored light wrapped around it like ribbons of light. Wherever the ribbons of light swept past, the ground shattered, and space was torn apart. Pieces of land were merged into the ribbons of light. High in the sky, the night was also torn apart, and space was shattered. The stars and moons in the sky were hidden in the morning sun, but now they were revealed again. They were abnormally bright, as if the aura of the entire world was disturbed. The power of the stars and moons was sucked in. The ribbons of light expanded, and so did the shell. Finally, it was tens of thousands of miles wide, and the aura covered hundreds of thousands of miles. The seven colors of the shell lit up the entire night sky. Although the sun had already shot out from the east, the sun couldn't cover the seven-colored light. Bei Xian, Er's true body was revealed like this. Feng Wu, Wen Chu, the five-colored sea god shell, and the flying feather void beast couldn't get close. Not only were they forced back tens of thousands of miles by the terrifying aura and dazzling seven-colored light, they also had to use their powers to block the penetration of the seven-colored light and the powerful suction of the shell. The five-colored seashell couldn't help but exclaim, "Ancestor." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. The five-colored seashell couldn't help but exclaim, "Ancestor." Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, several seven-colored halos flashed past his head. The five-colored sea god seashell's body immediately left its body and shot toward the halos. The sea god seashell's body also couldn't help but rush toward the seven-colored shell in the distance. The five-colored sea god shell was shocked. He hurriedly moved and disappeared in space. When he reappeared, he was hiding far behind the great saint Golden-Winged Rock and the other great saints of the demon race. Looking at the place where the five-colored sea god shell was previously, Bai Qingyu's monster corpses were pulled into the sky by the seven-colored halos. These corpses were torn apart in the halos, and the various colors of the corpses were absorbed by the halos of the seven-colored sea god shell. The seven-colored sea god shell. In addition to the monster corpses in the sky, giant trees, rocks were also torn apart or sucked into the halos of the seven-colored sea god shell. Hiss. The golden-winged great Peng sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes flashed with golden light. He had never seen Bei Xian use such a big divine ability. He also didn't think that Xiao Hua, who was sucked into the big seven-colored halo shell world, could cause Bei Xian to use such power. Saint Golden-Winged Rock's shell became more and more now. He became more, and Yu was. Tiger Wu and the battle. Before seeing the result of the battle, he wouldn't stretch out a single feather or use any kind of divine ability. With the great rock thinking this, the cunning flying feather and eye void beast naturally watched from the sidelines. He even moved closer to Feng Wu. He knew that even if Xiao Hua was killed by the great ancestor, Feng Wu was still a seven-star great saint of the Great Sage Hall. Since Xiao Hua had such a powerful divine ability, Feng Wu must be on the same level. Of course, if the great ancestor was killed by Xiao Hua, the flying feather and eye void beast didn't even dare to think about what would happen. Would the Great Sage Hall still be the Great Sage Hall of the demon race? Old ancestor. Only the five-colored sea god seashell's heart was in his throat. He wanted to use his origin force to investigate, but his origin force was immediately shattered the moment it came into contact with the light beam. He could only wait silently in the distance. "Fellow Immortal, do you feel anything?" Wen Chu frowned and asked Daoist Wu, "How is fellow Daoist Xiao?" "Same as before, I don't feel anything." Daoist sorcerer also had a worried look on his face as he transmitted his voice. "This big shell is too strange. It seems to be a world of its own. Daoist Xiao immediately lost contact with us when he fell in. Even my soul cultivation secret technique can't contact him." Rumble. Just as Daoist sorcerer's voice was transmitted, there was a deafening roar from the shell. Then, there was a crisp cracking sound and some cracks appeared on the shell. "Quickly, fellow Daoist Xiao is about to break free. Let's go over quickly." Feng Wu's phoenix eyes were the sharpest, and he immediately cried out when he saw the cracks appear. However, before they could move, an unexpected event occurred once more. Xiaohua released the 108 level 8 scattered nascent souls from his lower dantian. The Golden Crow Immortal slaying demonic array was formed in a few breaths. Bei Xian was shocked and didn't dare to hide anything. She hurriedly activated all her demonic power and used all her divine abilities. Not only did the image of chaos appear in the seven-colored light shell realm, but she also absorbed a terrifying amount of yuan qi of heaven and earth and the power of the stars and moon to replenish her energy. However, Xiaohua was fully prepared. The number of scattered nascent souls that came out was beyond Bei Xian's expectation. Before Bei Xian was ready, the Golden Crow Immortal slaying demonic array was activated. This was 108 8th tribulation scattered nascent soul cultivators. If they attacked at the same time, no one in the Thousand Devils sacred realm would be a match for them, let alone when they formed a formation. The huge golden crow flashed with lightning. Not only did the lightning condense into the golden crow's body, but it also turned into flames that spread into the space. Before the golden crow rushed into the chaotic space and landed on the whirlpool formed by the seven-colored light shell, its destructive aura had already caused the entire space to become chaotic. When the golden crow rushed into the space, the distorted space was instantly pierced through. The countless seven-colored light shell and the seven-colored light shell were annihilated at the same time. The golden crow screeched and pounced on the pearl of life that was filled with illusions. Boom! With a loud sound, the previously indestructible pearl of life was smashed into pieces. The seven-colored powder turned into dust and rose into the sky. After the pearl of life, it was naturally Bei Xian's real body. Under the golden crow's aura, the light pillar that supported the sky was extinguished. Xiaohua could even see Bei Xian's soft pink body. However, at this moment, buzz. Countless thick python-like light strips fell from the space outside and entangled the golden crow like a huge light net. Boom. There was no particular suspense. The golden crow rushed into the light net, and the thick light net could not stop it. In a moment it was smashed into pieces by the impact. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, Bei Xian's real body had disappeared behind the light net, and what was coming toward him was the seven-colored light shell. Boom! The golden crow pounced on the seven-colored light shell and produced a loud rumble. Amidst the rumble, the seven-colored light shell began to crack. Dozens of seven-colored light shards, each measuring several acres in size, fell down from the cracks. Ah! Bei Xian's painful cry came from behind those broken light strips not far away. Then, before Xiaohua could order the 8 tribulation nascent soul to attack again, Bei Xian's hysterical voice came from the sky, "Human, if that's the case, I'll die together with you." While she was speaking, dozens of seven-colored tentacles reached out from the turbulence of space and grabbed those seven-colored light shards. Then, amidst a loud noise, they attacked Xiaohua, Celestial Being, Reverend Yun, Archfiend Shi, and the 8 tribulation nascent soul. The seven-colored light shards were very strange. After whimpering, they immediately disappeared from the space. In just a few breaths of time, the space in front of Xiaohua glowed with a sharp light, from which a cold aura that could cut one's soul rushed out. Without hesitation, Xiaohua teleported backward. At the same time, he waved his hand, and the four-colored thunderbolt hand came crashing down. As soon as Xiaohua moved, a seven-colored light shard rushed out, and the four-colored thunderbolt hand came crashing down. But it was a pity that the seven-colored light shard went straight up. With a light swoosh, the thunderbolt hand was cut apart by it, and then it cut through the space and came crashing down on Xiaohua. The seven-colored light shard seemed to be one with the space, and there was no hindrance in the space. Xiaohua had just realized that the seven-colored light shard had already hit him. Swoosh. With a light swoosh, Xiaohua's transcendence golden body was immediately shattered, and his fleshly body was cut open. The cut was several miles long and several feet deep. Ah! The wound on the seven-colored light shard was very strange. Not only was it painful to the bone marrow, but it was also like an iron hammer had hit his soul. It was so painful that Xiaohua could not help but cry out, and his transcendence golden body shrunk rapidly. Ugh! Without waiting for Xiaohua to perform any other divine ability, the seven-colored light shard once again came crashing down on his neck. Xiaohua was scared out of his wits. Once again, the thunderbolts around him were activated, and he fled into the distance. Aoo! Right at this moment, Reverend Yun's miserable howl was heard. A few of his huge dragon scales had been shattered by the seven-colored light shard, and dragon blood was flowing out from under the scales. Reverend Yun was already in such a state, but Celestial and Archfiend Shi were not any better. The surface of Celestial's body was covered with cuts, while Archfiend Shi's fiend body was chopped into a few pieces. The 108th tribulation scattered nascent souls were also driven away by the seven-colored light shard. In particular, a few of them were nearly chopped in half by the seven-colored light shard. At this moment, Bai Xian was like a crazy woman who had completely lost her mind. No one dared to provoke her. No. Xiaohua had tried to dodge a few times, but he still could not escape from Bai Xian's vicious attack, and his body was covered with wounds. Then, he looked at Archfiend Shi, Celestial, Reverend Yun, and those 8th tribulation scattered nascent souls. They were also covered with wounds, and it was hard for them to protect themselves. Xiaohua became more and more anxious, and he thought to himself, this seven-colored light shard must be a part of Bai Xian's shell, and I wonder how many years she has been refining it. This thing is also an invincible magical treasure in her seven-colored light shell realm. If we are forced to retreat by her again, not only will we not be able to protect ourselves, even those over 100 scattered nascent souls will be killed by her one by one, even though they have the overall strength of 9th-tier nascent souls. When that happens, all my previous efforts will be in vain. Chapter 4403. Thinking of this, Xiaohua clenched his teeth and opened his mouth again. Pooh! A ray of light rushed out and an object appeared in the air. This object was none other than Shang Huaming's god statue. Xiaohua had previously sent it into his dantian from the space in case of an emergency. He really didn't expect that, at this time, Xiaohua would finally have an opportunity to use this object. Wang. It was very strange. The moment the statue landed in the air, it immediately gave off an indescribable aura. Although the statue was the same as before, it didn't have any splendor and looked very inconspicuous in the seven-colored space, but Yi Shiwen didn't know what to say. However, as soon as that indescribable aura was released, all the seven-colored halos in the space suddenly became still. Even the rainbow-colored shards stopped in midair. In an instant, the entire space boiled, and all the halos surged toward the god statue. Ah! Bai Xian's surprised voice rang out once more. It was like a thunderclap that reverberated through the air. This voice was filled with disbelief and astonishment, but it was also filled with calmness and reverence. It was far from the crazed tone from before. Boom boom boom. The originally turbid halos in the space became transparent again. Bai Xian's huge body trembled as she slowly crawled down. A kind of solemnity, a kind of sacredness, a kind of sacrificial aura spontaneously emerged in the space. "See God, this servant is guilty, this servant is guilty." A kind of almost hysterical voice sounded from where she was crawling. Bei Xian unexpectedly gave up on chasing Xiao Hua and the others and threw herself in front of the god statue like a lowly servant. Looking at the god statue radiating 9 layers of brilliance that were even brighter than the sun, and the sacredness of the aura became even denser, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh of relief. Bei Xian had previously said clearly that she had 2 goals in bringing Xiao Hua into the 7-colored shell world. One was to kill Xiao Hua and silence him, the other was to obtain the whereabouts of the god statue. However, Xiao Hua also saw clearly that when he asked Bei Xian to confirm his identity, Bei Xian had once used light and shadow to create the image of the sea god. In front of that image, Bei Xian was so respectful and fearful. Therefore, Xiao Hua believed that Bei Xian wanted to obtain the god statue of the sea god. However, he didn't believe that this god statue was as important as she said. Moreover, Xiao Hua later tested Bei Xian several times. Bei Xian was rather fearful. All kinds of signs indicated that this god statue of the sea god was the only thing in the world that could restrain Bei Xian. Therefore, Bei Xian wanted to obtain it and not let others have it. Of course, Xiao Hua couldn't be sure that his judgment was right. He was afraid that this was Bei Xian's trick to lure him into taking out the god statue. At this time, it seemed that he was already at the end of the road. Xiao Hua had no choice but to take out the god statue. Seeing Bei Xian so fearful of the god statue, Xiao Hua's heart was greatly relieved. He knew that he had made the right bet. There was a glimmer of hope in the dark. Because he was afraid that Bei Xian would take the god statue away, Xiao Hua didn't release the god statue too far away. He still kept it in his domain. At this time, the 7-colored tide of light ignored Xiao Hua's domain and directly rushed into the god statue. Xiao Hua looked at Bei Xian lying on the ground and coldly said, "Bei Xian, since you have seen the god statue, you should stop, right? Quickly open the barrier, otherwise this Xiao will kill you." Bei Xian's body trembled. She looked extremely fearful and didn't dare to say a word. Ga. Demon Sovereign Shi's scattered body slowly condensed at this time. The demon flame on the surface of his body dimmed a lot. He smiled and flew to Xiao Hua's side. Looking at the god statue of the sea god, he shouted, "Big brother, you are really powerful. This unremarkable thing is actually the biggest nemesis of this old beggar, ha 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 ha." Before Xiao Hua could speak, Bei Xian's wild laughter came from the light pillar again. Human, you are really shallow. I was just putting on a show and you fell for it. You think I am really afraid of this god statue?" Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He waved his right hand and used the universe in the sleeve technique. He wanted to collect the god statue. However, the god statue that fell into the 7-colored tide of light was incomparably heavy. It seemed to have merged with the entire space. Even with Xiao Hua's ability, he couldn't collect it. Damn it. I was tricked. Xiao Hua's face was pale as he cursed in a low voice. At this time, he understood that if this god statue was as important as he thought, how could Bei Ming casually leave it in Shang Huaming's ancestral hall? Why didn't he carry it with him? He was still tricked by Bei Xian. He foolishly took the initiative to deliver this god statue to her. Ha. Bei Xian saw that Xiao Hua failed to collect the god statue and slowly stood up. The pillar of light that supported the sky appeared again. Following Bei Xian's laughter, the incomparably heavy god statue slowly flew towards her. As it approached, the divine aura on the god statue became denser and denser. This god statue of the sea god is a sacred artifact used by the descendants of my sea clan to display the might of the sea god. Bei Xian's mood was extremely good. She smiled and said, "With this object, I can borrow the power of the sea god's bloodline and exterminate everything." Back in the Red Sea domain, Bei Ming used this object to exterminate 100,000 members of the Sea clan. Since I can't use my spirit formation power to kill you all today, I will use this sacred artifact and let you all have a taste of my Shell clan's absolute saint's attack. Human, all of this is what you call fate. You took out my clan's sacred artifact to invite me to take your life. Let's go. When Xiaohua saw that the aura on the god statue was gradually turning corporeal, he dared not to hesitate any longer. Devis, Reverend Yun, Archfiend Shi, and the 108th Tribulation scattered nascent soul cultivators followed Xiaohua and sped away into the distance. They were not sure if they could escape from this great seven-colored shell realm. Bei Xian was not in a hurry to chase after them. She laughed and said, in front of the sea god, all of you are just ants. Not to mention in my great seven-colored shell realm, even in the sacred realm of thousand demons, all of you can never escape from the might of the sea god. As Bei Xian spoke, she saw the sea god statue getting closer and closer. Poof! A blood-red light shot out from the pillar of light and landed on the sea god statue. Boom! The sea god statue suddenly emitted a blood-red brilliance and fell towards Bei Xian's body. When the statue touched Bei Xian's true form, a sacred and majestic aura that could make all living things prostrate rolled out from the statue, and the entire space was filled with a buzzing noise. After that, the glow on Bei Xian's true form vanished in an instant. The statue swayed its tail as if it was alive, and the upper body of the human figure was surging violently. Human. Bei Xian, who had activated the sacred item with the blood essence of the descendants of the sea god, said in an extremely majestic voice from the statue, since you have offended the dignity of the sea god, I'll let you die under the majesty of the sea god today. I'll let you know the wrath of the sea god, which should not exist in the mortal world. While speaking, Bei Xian, who had transformed into the sea god, waved her hands in the air. The entire space folded and rolled together, revealing the figures of Xiaohua and the others who were fleeing desperately. Then, a shadow emerged between Bei Xian's brows. It was the shape of the sea god, and it drifted down with the aura of a supreme god. The 108th Tribulation nascent souls simply could not resist the majesty of the sea god. They were all pressed down and shrunk to the size of 3 feet, either curling up or crawling on the ground. They had no strength to resist at all. At this moment, Shi the fiend no longer looked like a fiend lord, and he could no longer take the form of a human. Like the fiend formation, he had been pressed down into a fiend energy, drifting powerlessly in the air. On the contrary, although the celestial, Reverend Yun, and Xiaohua were suppressed by the sacred aura, they still straightened their necks and waists, stubbornly resisting it, although their resistance was weak and pale. Die. Bei Xian's voice was like that of a god. Use your blood and soul to offer to the sea god, use your blood to redeem your sins, swoosh. The shadow of the sea god turned into layers and fell towards Xiaohua and the others. The seemingly light yet heavy aura of the sea god fell between Xiaohua's brows, and a feeling of extinction emerged in his heart. The gains he had made in the heavenly prison for tens of thousands of years, the gains his clones had made in the bloody storm in the ruins, the gains he had made from the sages of Wenchu, the gains he had made from the stars of Phoenix Parasol, the gains he had made from the primordial purple chi, and so on, were all gone at the same time. Although it was just a moment, it was another 100,000 years in Xiaohua's Tao state. When Xiaohua's eyes moved again, a feeling of enlightenment emerged from the bottom of his heart. There is a great terror between life and death. What I said is true. My countless accumulations have actually gone through in this moment of life and death. My Tao state has actually reached the late stage of Mahayana realm. In the future, as long as I have enough time to accumulate, I will definitely be able to reach the highest realm. Sigh, what a pity. Because along with his enlightenment, Xiaohua felt that the aura that was like the will of heaven and earth had passed through the space between his brows and rushed into his Niwen palace and the mysterious dark clouds. Everything would turn into nothingness in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Xiaohua's heart suddenly moved again. He thought of the mysterious golden core that he had picked up in the spatial crack of the Dragon Island. That golden core contained an extremely great mystery, and Xiao Hua did not dare to consume it back then. Furthermore, when Xiao Hua's space was evolving, this golden core had already left Shenhua continent and arrived at another place that had yet to take shape. Xiao Hua understood even more clearly that this golden core was definitely not the golden core of the cultivation world. Today, not only had Xiao Hua reached the Tao state, his cultivation had also reached a certain height. Although Xiao Hua still felt that he did not dare to try the medicinal pill, at this moment, there was no way out. Xiao Hua was the same as Bei Xian previously. He was prepared to fight to the death with his opponent. Presumably, if that mysterious golden core was consumed, when Xiao Hua exploded, he would also be able to drag Bei Xian down with him. Chapter 4404. However, no matter where Xiao Hua's consciousness went, there was still no news from Shenhua continent. Not to mention taking out the Jin Dan, he couldn't even take a look at it. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to die, there was a sudden change. Outside Xiao Hua's Naiwan palace, where the Buddha's Bodhi Buddha heart fire was, a transparent golden crystal that was even smaller than an ant appeared. It was the tiny godhead that Xiao Hua and his clone had condensed back on the primitive continent. The godhood that looked like a crystal was almost inaudible, but when the shadow of the sea god floated down, and the aura that resembled the will of heaven and earth landed, the entire crystal shone with an indescribable brilliance. This brilliance was different from ordinary brilliance. It didn't come from the crystal, but from various parts of the void. It was as if golden threads of light were suspended above the crystal. These threads of light were densely packed, and when the other end landed in the void, they disappeared without a trace. The crystal had many crystal faces, and there were even more that hadn't been revealed. These threads of light landed on different crystal faces. Some crystal faces had more threads of light, while others had fewer threads of light. At the same time, strange scenes appeared where the light threads touched the crystal surface. Patches of faith power faintly covered the crystal surface like clouds. Within the clouds of faith power, almost endless scenes of mountains and rivers, men plowing and women weaving, primordial phenomena, the collapse of the heavens and the earth, and other scenes flashed inexplicably. The crystal godhead wasn't supposed to be revealed, and it was only because the sea god's phantom approached that the crystal godhead was activated. However, as soon as the godlike figure of the sea god within the shell world approached the godhead didn't react at all. Instead, the figure of the sea god trembled and shattered into pieces. Almost at the same time, the figure of the sea god within the shell world was reduced to powder. Not only that, but the sea god's phantom was the power of the sea god's descendants that Bei Xian had activated with the help of the sea god's sacred tool, the sea god statue. This kind of power was invincible because of its so-called divine power. This divine power was originally a pseudo-divine power. At this time, the pseudo-divine power collided with the embryonic form of the godhood. Although the embryonic form was not solid and had not truly taken shape, it was still a real godhood. How could low-level cultivators like Bei Xian, and Xiao Hua understand the mysteries of this world? After the sea god's projection was shattered, the godhead's backlash, or rather, the godhead's fury, rushed towards the sea god's projection. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, everything within a radius of 10,000 miles that could sense the sea god's shadow, except for the sea god's statue, turned into nothingness. Then, in the space that was devoid of light, a 9-colored dot appeared on the forehead of the sea god statue. As soon as the 9-colored dot appeared, the entire sea god statue flowed with light, and strands of color surged into the 9-colored dot. Ah! Bei Xian's hoarse and miserable cry resounded from within the statue, and then her nascent divinity was forcefully pushed out of the statue. All of this happened too quickly, and Bei Xian stood in front of the sea god statue in a daze, looking at it in disbelief. She did not know what had happened. In just a moment, the entire sea god statue turned gray, and all of the light fell into the 9-colored dot. Then, the light around Bai Xian's body began to overflow and fall into the nine-colored dot. Bai Xian was shocked. Her figure flashed and instantly vanished. At the same time, the gray and lusterless pillar of light suddenly glowed brightly, and then countless enormous seven-colored pythons of light started to move throughout the heavens and the earth. Boom! The entire seven-colored shell world had just returned to Bai Xian's control when the entire barrier let out a thunderous rumble. The space within 10,000 miles, 100,000 miles, collapsed at the same time, and the seven-colored light pythons were forcefully extracted. At the same time, the light pythons turned into nothingness, and another 100,000 miles wide pillar of light shot into the sky. Looking at the seven-colored shell world that had previously trapped Xiaohua and the others, Bai Xian's natal shell had already turned into powder, and with a loud rumble, it turned into dust. However, the huge light beam had only just shot out a few miles into the sky when layers of mushroom-like spatial collapses appeared high up in the sky. Countless inexplicable and obscure laws that no one knew about were wantonly tearing through the spatial collapses. The light beam rushed under the laws and crashed down again. The pillar of light that was hundreds of thousands of miles wide fell into the nine-colored dot in front of Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua was dumbfounded, and he also did not know what had happened. However, as far as his eyes could see, his surroundings were distorted, and his divine sense could not leave his body, so he could only stare blankly. The pillar of light fell into the nine-colored sky, and in the sky hundreds of thousands of kilometers above, many strange laws disappeared at the same time. However, layers of spatial collapse still existed, and an unknown law fell from the spatial collapse onto the entire Thousand Demons sacred realm. As the law fell, the dim seven-colored halo around Bai flowed out uncontrollably and fell towards the nine-colored light. Just as Bai was panicking, an even denser seven-colored light flew out from another part of the space and quickly fell towards the nine-colored light. The source of the light was a seven-colored conch. Not only that, but other than the distorted light and shadow, there were even more faint, dense, five-colored, and three-colored lights that all poured into the nine-colored dot. This. Xiaohua was shocked. Impossible. At this time, Bai Xian's crazy voice hysterically screamed, "I am the sea god's descendant, who can take away my bloodline? Take away the sea god's bloodline?" Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. Naturally, he thought of the godhead. This must be the power of the godhead. Seeing the sea-like light surging over, Xiaohua could not help but sigh, "Damn it, what a big deal. This is probably going to take away the bloodline of the rainbow sea god shell in the entire Thousand Beasts sacred realm." Thinking of this, Xiaohua smiled coldly and used his divine sense to check his own space. As expected, after the big seven-colored halo shell world shattered, his space could be sensed. Since this was the case, Xiaohua did not hesitate to pull Bai Qing out of the Shenhua continent. However, he saw Bai Qing standing in mid-air in a daze. Before he could figure out the situation in front of him, the five-colored light began to flow out of his body and turned into fragments of light that fell into the nine-colored dot. "Ao!" Bai Qing cried out loudly, sensing the disappearance of his divine sense. He did not know what had happened. "Wu!" Without waiting for Bai Qing to say more, Xiaohua waved his hand and sent this hateful and pitiful demon king into the Shenhua continent again. Bai Qing wasn't the only one who was confused. All of Bai Xian's descendants in the Thousand Demons sacred realm were confused as well. The most miserable one was the great saint of the demon clan, the five-colored sea god Shell, who was closest to the nine-colored dot. Feng Wu, Wen Chu, and the others were overjoyed when they saw the shell in the sky crack. Feng Wu was about to fly over to save Xiaohua, but before they could get close, another strange change occurred. An indescribable divine aura surged out of the crack, and the seven-colored shell, which was the most beautiful in the morning, instantly turned into nothingness. Feng Wu was overjoyed, but after the shell disappeared, an enormous beam of light shot out. Even a cultivator as strong as Feng Wu, who was at the 9th grade of essence force, was powerless under the impact of this beam of light. In an instant, he was sent flying like a fallen leaf. Before Feng Wu and the others could regain their balance, they heard another cry of surprise from nearby. Ah! What's going on? Hearing the voice of the five-colored sea god Shell, Feng Wu and the others were alarmed and hurriedly looked over. The five-colored light around the five-colored sea god Shell surged and flew into the sky. No matter how the five-colored sea god Shell waved the shell, it could not stop this. Beside him, the golden-winged rock and the flying feather void beast looked on in confusion, not knowing what to do. Wang! The five-colored sea god Shell suddenly glowed with starlight, and the star marks hidden in the shell immediately flew up with the starlight. Woo woo woo! The brilliance of the stars and the moon fell from the sky, protecting the five-colored sea god Shell. As the space vibrated, the five-colored sea god Shell gradually turned into a star, and the five-colored star, which was thousands of miles in size, was revealed in the morning light just like that. Under the sunlight, the 7 colors of the star were so dazzling and dazzling. Unfortunately, it was just like a flash in the pan. Even though the five-colored sea god Shell had turned into a star, the five-colored halo showed no signs of stopping. The colorful star slowly faded under the stunned gazes of everyone and the demons. The five-colored brilliance that was extracted just flowed into the light shadow that covered the surroundings and did not appear again. When the entire star turned black and white, the five-colored sea god Shell was forcibly pushed out of the star. The shell was still a shell, and the brilliance was still brilliance, but the 5 colors were gone. The primordial spirit of the five-colored sea god Shell appeared from the shell. Although it was not in human form, the golden-winged rock had already seen the frustration, surprise, and confusion on its face. The golden-winged rock couldn't help but ask, Shell Saint, what's going on? The five-colored sea god Shell looked at the golden-winged rock in despair. He wanted to hide the truth, but looking at the colors all over the sky, he knew that he was not the only one who would suffer today. Even the ancestor couldn't escape, so how could he hide it? My bloodline has been taken. The five-colored sea god Shell's voice was like the wind, like a wandering soul answering. Ah! How is that possible? Both the golden-winged rock and the flying feather void beast were shocked. After all, the demon race was different from the human race. The bloodline was extremely important. The five-colored sea god Shell's sea god bloodline was taken away. Could he still be the five-colored sea god Shell? Chapter 4405. Hearing the five-colored seashell's absent-minded answer, the 2 great saints of the demon race were shocked. They looked at Feng Wu, Celestial, and the others with fear. However, to their surprise, Feng Wu and the others were also puzzled. They looked at the five-colored seashell and the strange light and shadow in the distance. Xiao Hua put Bai Qing, who had lost her bloodline, into his spatial zone. He had another thought. He knew that his Shenhua continent was isolated from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. The backlash from the godhead and the stripping of the sea god's bloodline would not affect the Shenhua continent. Bai Qing's bloodline had been stripped, but the five-colored sea god Shell still had Bai Bo and the little white dragon. However, Xiaohua only thought about it for a moment. He did not take Bai Bo out of Shenhua continent. Not to mention that Bai Bo was already pregnant with the little white dragon's flesh and blood. Just her act of rescuing the little white dragon from the heavenly dam water prison was something that Xiaohua, who clearly distinguished between gratitude and grudges, could not allow such a cruel divine punishment to fall upon her. Although the Thousand Demons' sacred realm was huge, and the 3 continents were even bigger, the divine punishment was very fast. In just half the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the light that came from all directions had become sparse. The space within hundreds of thousands of miles had lost all color, except for the cluster of 9 colors. The light and shadow barrier was still there. Fellow Taoist. Celestial flew over and asked curiously, "You? What kind of technique is this? It's really magical." Xiaohua did not answer Celestial, but looked elsewhere. At this time, Reverend Yun and Archdevil Shi were also flying over with wounds all over their bodies. The 108 tribulation scattered nascent souls were also flying over from all directions. Fortunately, although most of them were severely injured, none of them had lost their lives. Xiaohua slapped the top of his head, and his innate energy gushed out, sucking all the scattered nascent souls into his dantian. Then, Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked at Bei Xian in the distance. Bei Xian did not transform into her human form. Her original body, which had lost its color, was still standing there, looking very majestic. However, a tentacle grew out of Bei Xian's body, and the tentacle tightly grasped the seven-colored conch that had also lost its color. Bei Xian. At this point, Xiaohua no longer called Bei Xian Senior. He only said indifferently, "Are you satisfied with this ending? You. Where exactly are you? God?" Bei Xian didn't dare to transform in front of Xiaohua. She could only ask in fear. Xiaohua shook his head. "Let's not talk about whether or not I'm a god. Do you think I look like a god? How could Xiaohua be a god? Who had ever heard of a god who was only at the 9th level of origin energy in the mortal world?" Thus, Bei Xian hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, "If you are not a god, then your bloodline must be even purer. Otherwise, there would be no divine punishment." "Forget it." Xiaohua smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "I don't know what the reason is. After all, this kind of divine punishment is too strange. It is not something that an insignificant cultivator like me can understand. However, no matter what the process was, the ending is already like this. I just want to ask you, are you satisfied?" Bei Xian didn't speak for a long time. When there was no more light coming from outside the barrier, she said, "You guessed right. Most of what I've told you is true. It's just that Bei Ming and I are not lovers. In the words of you humans, he and I are very close blood relatives. He has been very good to me since I was young. I have always regarded him as my blood brother. I am not looking for him for the sea god statue. I am just looking for him. Moreover, I believe that he is also looking for me. Blood relations are not something that can be isolated by some spatial boundary." Xiaohua nodded slightly. He now believed Bei Xian's words. Because when he saw Bei Ming, it was in that innate great formation. Presumably, Bei Ming wanted to use that great formation to find Bei Xian. Unfortunately, Bei Ming didn't have the body of a half-god. He couldn't escape the corrosion of the clear time demon formation. The reason why I wanted to kill you is actually only for one reason. I didn't want the news that Bei Ming and I were stranded here to be leaked, and I didn't want the bloodline of the sea god to be discovered by the sea tribe. Speaking of this, Bei Xian smiled bitterly. I did it, and I did it thoroughly. Even if the pursuers of the sea race are here now, when they see Bei Ming and me, I'm afraid they will never kill us. Because we don't have any bloodline of the sea god. Bei Xian paused for a brief moment, then threw her head back and cried out hysterically, "Oh heaven! Almighty gods, please tell me, what have I done wrong? Didn't I spend so much effort just to find my elder brother? Didn't I spend so much effort just to protect myself and prevent the sea race from discovering us? What have I done wrong? Why am I being punished like this by the gods?" Celestial, Reverend Yun, and Archfiend Shi had different expressions. Celestial didn't care, Reverend Yun looked pensive, and Archfiend Shi didn't think so. Upon hearing Bei Xian's sorrowful and unyielding voice, a cold smile emerged on Xiaohua's face. Bei Xian, he said word by word, "There is no need for any gods to answer this question, let alone the heaven. I can tell you. It's not your fault for looking for your elder brother, and it's not your fault for protecting yourself. It's because you've done something you shouldn't have done. I don't know what you've done, so I can't tell you anything. First, let's talk about how you've suppressed the little white dragon for over 200 years. What does the little white dragon have to do with you? He doesn't know anything. You've heard that I might know something about Dark North, so you captured him and brought him here. But, since he said he didn't know anything, why did you still suppress him? You've been suppressing him for 200 years. The lifespan of an ordinary human is no more than 100 years. How many 200 years can one live? Fortunately, he is a dragon. Not to mention the suppression, because of your suppression, the Demon King of Shrouding Sky Ridge and the Demon King of Ancient Bell Mountain have a lot of thoughts. Who knows how many of those demon clans and humans related to this Shao died on the way to rescue this Shao. Let's not talk about the little white dragon. Xiaohua coldly said, since I've already come here and rescued Bei Ming from the danger zone and personally brought him to you so you can reunite with your elder brother, I can be considered your benefactor. But, in order to prevent your tracks from being exposed, you actually bit the hand that fed you and wanted to kill me inside your great rainbow halo shell world. An ungrateful person like you, if you don't suffer the wrath of the heavens, if you don't suffer the punishment of the gods, how can the heavens be fair? You only put your own benefits first and don't care about the lives of others. You act as you please in the Thousand Demons sacred realm and act as the ancestor of a demon race. You don't even put the Vairocana revered world sovereign and immortal emperor Go Chen in your eyes. A selfish person like you, a domineering person, if you don't suffer the wrath of the heavens, if you don't suffer the punishment of the gods, how can the heavens be fair? Today, your sea god's Shell clan is suffering the punishment of the gods, and it is all because of you. It is all because of your previous sins, the consequences of your previous actions. Only you are qualified to taste such a bitter wine. But at this moment, you still don't repent and don't see your mistakes clearly. You still dare to thicken your skin and question the heavens? If you don't suffer the punishment of the gods, then who will? You. Bei Xian was truly angry and forgot that the main culprit of the divine punishment was Xiaohua. She angrily said, "What qualifications do you have to criticize me? You didn't kill humans, you didn't kill demons. Not to mention anything else, you led 200,000 humans to attack Bai Qingyu and killed more than 1 million descendants of my Bai Qingyu clan. Why didn't you suffer the punishment of the gods? I killed people, and I also killed demons. However, I have always been afraid of the heavens, and I also believe that the gods are watching over me. Similarly, I have always done things without betraying my conscience, and I have never forced others into a dead end. If someone doesn't offend me, I will never offend them. Of course, if someone offends me, I will definitely retaliate. Everything I did was merely a counterattack, and it was all because you forced me into a corner." Xiaohua retorted with no trace of politeness. The sea god's bloodline of the entire Thousand Demons sacred realm has been taken away. What face do you have to talk about leaving people some leeway? Bei Xian snorted disdainfully. You have the final say, so you can do whatever you want. Humph. Xiaohua coldly snorted. If I didn't have a benevolent heart, do you think you can still stand here and talk to me? Bei Xian didn't say anything. After losing her life-bound shell and the great rainbow halo shell realm, although her strength was still very strong, she couldn't be considered a match in front of Xiaohua. Just those 108th tribulations scattered nascent souls were enough to kill her. Seeing that Bei Xian was speechless, Xiaohua didn't expect to wake her up with just a few words. He looked at the barrier on the left, which was still covered by it, and his mind swept towards the nine-colored brilliance. Boom! The moment his mind touched it, Xiaohua felt as if his entire body had been struck by lightning. An incomparably divine will, which was even more vast and majestic than the Dragon Emperor's power that Xiaohua had seen in the South Sea Dragon Palace, was born. The moment he touched it, Xiaohua immediately felt as if he was a speck of dust facing the entire world. Then, countless visions flashed in Xiaohua's mind at the same time. Ah! Xiaohua screamed, and his entire transcendence golden body collapsed. Humph! Seeing Xiaohua like this, how could Bei Xian not know what had happened? She coldly snorted and said, a man whose heart is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, as expected. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror and see clearly what you are? A mere human actually dares to covet the sea god's divine power of the Shell clan. Bei Xian'er's curses were vicious, but what she said was the truth. This nine-colored brilliance was the sea god's divine power that was contained in the bloodline of all the sea god's descendants in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. Although the grade of this divine power wasn't as high as the godhead that Xiaohua gave her, it was still far from what a human cultivator like Xiaohua could obtain. Xiaohua had only just touched this object, and the Transcendent's golden body condensed from magic power was unable to support the vast divine power and collapsed. Chapter 4406. However, before Bei Xian'er had a chance to gloat over Xiaohua's misfortune, Xiaohua's physical body was revealed within the crumbling golden body. Although Xiaohua's physical body was riddled with wounds, with many of his muscles and bones exposed, those wounds had been inflicted by Bei Xian'er's natal shell, and had nothing to do with the power of the sea god. How is this possible? Bei Xian'er exclaimed once again. At this point, she had finally come to a realization that this human cultivator was definitely not an ordinary cultivator. Xiaohua raised his hand and looked at his intact palm, then lowered his head and looked at every part of his fleshly body. Once again, he recalled the demigod body that Elder Wu of Huda Stockade told him when he was still in Million Meng Mountains. The demigod body, as the name implies, possesses the body of a great god. Aside from the quintessence of a great god, the demigod body is no different from a great god. Now, I seem to have formed the embryonic form of a quintessence. If I'm not mistaken, the golden threads on the crystal face should be extremely pure power of faith. Xiaohua then raised his head to look at the nine-colored brilliance and thought to himself, Elder Wu also said that the demigod body and godhead are not something that can be obtained through cultivation, and can only be obtained by relying on the power of heaven and earth and prying into the mysteries of heaven and earth. I was fortunate enough to obtain both, so it can be said that I possess the divine power that Bei Xian'er spoke of. However, I'm still in the mortal world, so I don't know how to control divine power. As such, it's not that I can't obtain the power of the sea god, it's that I can't obtain it. If this were in the past, perhaps Xiaohua would really have reached out to touch the nine-colored radiance to test his own thoughts. However, Xiaohua was already a grand ascension stage cultivator, so how could he risk his own physical body in such a reckless manner? The power of the sea god is contained in the bloodline of the Shell tribe, so Bei Xian'er can use her bloodline to activate the holy artifact of the Shell tribe. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He really couldn't bear to abandon the power of the sea god, and his mind raced. That's right. I can't use the power of the sea god as a flying god, so I have to use a holy artifact. Or perhaps the sea god's power also required a bloodline or a saint artifact. The statue of the sea god has already been destroyed, and there are no more descendants of the sea god in the Thousand Beasts sacred realm. My bloodline cannot be borrowed. If that's the case, I'll have to find a suitable saint artifact. Little doe. At this moment, Xiaohua thought of the unknown origin of the item without hesitation. At the same time, he didn't know how to repair it or activate it. But it was another extremely terrifying small fight. Little doe was able to destroy the sword tomb, trap the ferocious flames of the celestial being Bloodbone, and even release the Pangu axe. Presumably, it's not a saint artifact, but it can also restrain the nine-colored sea god's power, right? Xiaohua waved his hand and took out Xiaodou. What is this? Bei Xian'er was slightly stunned. Seeing Xiaohua toss the small bucket towards the nine-colored sea god's power, she couldn't help but mock, "Human, don't waste your time. The sea god's power will be taken away by the sea god soon, what?" Hearing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but be shocked. He hurriedly raised his hand and pointed at Xiaodou. He raised his head and said, "You said that God can sense the sea god's power. He will descend here?" Humph. Bei Xian'er sneered and replied with contempt, "How can Lord Sea God come to such a low-level world? The sea god's power still exists at this moment only because of the sea god's light world around it. After a while, this light world will disperse under the sunlight and the sea god's power will dissipate in this space. The 3 continents won't be able to withstand the sea god's power, so the sea god's power will naturally go far away. In the end, it will be taken away by the sea god. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua was relieved when he heard this. However, Bei Xian said again, if not for my sea god's bloodline and the saint artifact, it would be impossible for you to use this sea god's power. You should give up on this idea. Once your saint artifact comes in contact with the sea god's power, it will definitely be crushed into powder by the god's punishment. You will also. Bei Xian originally wanted to say that Xiao Hua would also be affected, but seeing that the previous 2 sea gods' punishment didn't injure Xiao Hua, she obediently shut her mouth. How do you know if you don't try? Xiao Hua pointed at Xiao Dou with his finger, and Xiao Dou fell down. Shua. The 9-colored sea god's power was actually taken away by Xiao Dou. Moreover, Xiao Dou, which had never changed before, actually emitted a 9-colored brilliance when it came in contact with the sea god's power. Layer after layer of light waves wantonly overflowed from the 4 walls of Xiao Dou, and around Xiao Dou, a thin layer of pitch-black space faintly formed. An aura that could exterminate all living things was emitted from the space. Bei Xian's eyes fell out, if she had eyes. Suddenly, Bei Xian shouted, how can you be a human? You must be a heaven race. This seems to be a heaven race's saint artifact. Bei Xian's voice was loud and full of fear. Che. Xiao Hua disdainfully glared at Bei Xian and said, if you don't know, don't guess blindly. This Xiao is a real human. How can I be a heaven race? Then, how can you have a heaven race's saint artifact? Isn't this the legendary saint artifact used by the heaven race during the ancient war, 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper? Bei Xian couldn't believe her eyes and shouted, although I have never seen this item before, but this 10,000 extinguishing aura is exactly the same as what is recorded in my Red Sea region's royal secret codex. Where is the secret codex? Is there a method to refine the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper? How do I activate this 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper? Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and asked. Greedy human. Bei Xian was completely convinced at this time. She sighed and said, my shell race's secret codex was already snatched away by the sea race when they invaded the Red Sea region. If I took the secret codex, even if I escaped to the Thousand Devils sacred realm, I'm afraid the sea race would still chase after me. As for how to refine the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper and how to activate it, you should go find the heaven race's secret codex. How would I know? Forget it. Xiao Hua's mind rolled up the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper. Sure enough, no more divine energy was produced. Xiao Hua easily stored the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper into his space along with the sea god's power. At this time, the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper could no longer stay in the space where Reverend Yun was. Instead, it landed in another unformed space and stopped, floating quietly. After the 9-colored sea god's power was gone, the sea god's light realm was also slowly disintegrating under the scorching sun. Bei Xian's true form was revealed under the sunlight. Although the 7-colored brilliance was no longer there, her snow-white skin was tinged with a pinkish color, which really made Xiao Hua's itch. Rumble. As if unable to bear Xiao Hua's passionate gaze, Bei Xian's huge body emitted a rumbling sound and quickly shrunk. In just a moment, she had transformed into a beautiful woman dressed in a snow-white dress. Unfortunately, this beautiful woman's face was filled with an unyielding stubbornness. Her eyes were also filled with frost, and she looked at everything around her with impatience. It was only when her gaze fell on the conch in her hand that warmth appeared in her eyes. The light realm was gone, and Xiao Hua's gaze moved away from Bei Xian's body. He looked around and saw that the ground had collapsed, leaving behind a deep pit. The mountains and lakes he saw before were all gone, and under the deep pit and the crack in the ground, there was an undulating mess. Gravel, wood chips, flesh, and bones were scattered everywhere. Everything was completely different from the Bai Qingyu that Xiaohua saw before. The sea turns into mulberry fields, the mountains are moved, and the seas are filled. That's all there is to it. Xiaohua looked around and released his divine sense. Then, he shook his head slightly and sighed. If it weren't for this battle, how could it have become like this? While he was talking, a rather anxious Yuan will swept over, but when it landed on Xiaohua, it was quickly withdrawn. Then, a phoenix spread its wings and flew over from afar. Wasn't that the 7 stars' great saint, Fengwu? After Fengwu, Wen Chu and Daoist, which each used their divine abilities and flew over like shooting stars. The 3 clones shouted almost in unison, "Fellow Daoist, are you all right?" "Ha." Xiaohua lowered his head to look at his tattered Daoist robe and the wounds on his body. He said with a smile, "However, they are all flesh wounds and can't be considered serious. I'll be fine after resting for a few days." Even fellow Daoist Celestial was injured. This ancestor of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm is indeed powerful. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes, and her gaze fell on Bai Xian, not far away. A 7 stars great saint is indeed awe-inspiring. Bai Xian felt the ferocity in Feng Wu's eyes and said with equal harshness, "Unfortunately, Xiaohua didn't think you were my opponent, so he didn't dare to pull you into the barrier. Otherwise, I'd like to see what you're capable of." "It's not too late now." Feng Wu flapped her wings and sneered. There seemed to be no fear in her tone. "Ancestor." At this moment, the 5-colored sea god Shell also flew over with a long face and said anxiously, "What? What exactly happened?" "What happened?" "It's nothing." Bai Xian looked up at the sky and pointed at the sun, saying, "The night of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm has passed and the day has come. The sun still rises. When the day ends and the night comes, the stars still rise." "But..." The 5-colored sea god Shell wanted to ask more, but Bai Xian snorted coldly and scolded it via voice transmission. Only then did the 5-colored sea god Shell stand to the side and look at the sky, feeling wronged. It was the golden-winged great rock that flew the fastest. Only now did it come over with the flying feather void beast. When the 2 great saints of the demon race saw Bai Xian, they didn't dare to slight her and hurriedly bowed. Bai Xian didn't say anything to the 2 great saints of the demon race and only nodded slightly. The 2 great saints seemed to be very used to Bai Xian's attitude. After getting up, they looked at each other and stood to the side without saying anything, quietly waiting for Bai Xian's orders. Bai Xian glanced at the 3 great saints' respect and felt slightly relieved. She asked again, "Bai Qingyu caused such a big commotion. Why did only you 3 great saints come over? Where are the other 3? Chapter 4407. "Yes, old ancestor." The 5-colored sea god Seashell hurriedly replied, "There's a warning from the north of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. 3 demons have been killed for no reason. About 200,000 demons have gone missing. The 3 great sages have split up and gone to investigate the situation." "Oh." Bai Xian was stunned. The demons from the Boundless Sea, Suncheong Mountain, and Dark Abyss didn't go? They actually alerted 3 great sages? "Old ancestor," the golden-winged rock said, "Tsangyu Heaven sent 3 great sages to investigate, but they didn't send back any information. They probably can't come back." Seeing that the situation was urgent, Dragon Sage and the others went personally. Bai Xian nodded and didn't ask any more. At this time, Xiaohua had already transmitted the whole story in his heart. Wen Chu, Feng Wu, and Wu's eyes lit up. They really didn't expect Bai Xian's ability to be so powerful, and such a miraculous thing actually happened in the big 7-colored halo shell realm. The so-called divine punishment, Godhead, divine race, and sea god were all unheard of. After Xiaohua finished speaking, he looked at the three great sages of the demon race and knew it was time to end this matter. He took out the Kunlun mirror and used his magic power to bring Little White Dragon and Jade Wave out of the Shenhua continent. Ah! Bei Xian exclaimed in surprise when she saw Jade Wave. On the other hand, Xiaohua glanced at Bei Xian and said indifferently, apart from the fact that I won't attack unless I'm attacked, I'm different from you. Unless it's the end, I definitely won't cut off all paths of retreat and leave no chance of survival for others. I know you didn't believe me before, but now, do you believe me? The three great sages of the demon race were confused. Bei Xian looked up at the blue sky and then at the vast land. She sighed. Alas, even if I don't believe you, so what? Her tone was so vicissitudes of life that she didn't seem so depressed when she was defeated by Xiaohua. Then Bei Xian bent down and performed a courtesy that Xiaohua didn't understand. She said, Spiritual Master Zhao's breadth of mind is the first I've seen in my life. I was wrong before, please accept my bow. Sigh, Senior, there's no need to be so courteous. Xiaohua also sighed. Based on the sea god statue alone, regardless of whether the rainbow conch was related to Shang Huaming or not, Bei Xian was definitely related to him. He could be considered half a disciple of Shang Huaming. As a junior, he should be on good terms with Bei Xian But because of Bei Xian things had escalated to this point. Not only had Bei Xian suffered divine punishment, but even the sea god bloodline of the thousand monster sacred realm and the innocent rainbow sea conch had been affected. Xiaohua and Shang Huaming's previous feelings had almost completely vanished. Furthermore, Xiaohua almost didn't dare to believe that if the rainbow sea conch could transform and learned of what had happened, he would fly into a rage. Therefore, he could only help Bei Xian up and said, This is fate playing tricks on us. You and I are just pawns in the game. The previous misunderstanding. Why don't we just let it go? Spiritual Master is so magnanimous. I really don't have the face to face you. I will do as you say. Bei Xian stood up, her heart filled with complex feelings. At this moment, Little White Dragon woke up from his daze. He was shocked to see the three great sages. Although he had never seen a great sage before, how could he not recognize the aura and appearance of the great sage of the demon clan? He was just about to pull Jade Wave and escape when he turned around and saw Xiaohua. Beside Xiaohua was Daoist Sorcerer, who he was even more familiar with. Xiao. Little White. Why are you here? There's nothing for you to do here. Hurry up and leave. Little White Dragon's face didn't show any ecstasy. Instead, after a flash of surprise, his face immediately tensed up. He hurriedly shouted and gave Xiaohua a look. Xiaohua smiled, his heart filled with warmth. He waved his hand and said, Little White, I've wronged you these 200 years. Ah. Until now, Little White suddenly realized that although the Xiaohua in front of him was very familiar, his temperament was completely different. Even with his own strength, he couldn't detect Xiaohua's strength. Little White retreated a few feet in shock and said anxiously, You. Are you Xiaohua? If he's not Xiaohua, who am I? Who am I? Daoist Sorcerer extended his hand and said with a smile. Daoist Sorcerer didn't look like Xiaohua. His face couldn't be distinguished by the naked eye and divine sense. However, Little White Dragon knew immediately that Daoist Sorcerer was the soul cultivator Xiaohua. He was the soul cultivator Xiaohua who cultivated together with him in the mysterious dark clouds of Xiaohua. Little White Dragon stretched out his hand almost without hesitation and shook hands with Daoist Sorcerer. Feeling the slight heat from Daoist Sorcerer's hand, Little White Dragon immediately understood. He was really ecstatic and shouted, Congratulations, fellow cultivator. No need to congratulate me. It won't be long before I congratulate you. Daoist Sorcerer said with a smile and looked up at Jade Wave behind Little White Dragon, who was at a loss. Little White Dragon chuckled and waved at Jade Wave. Come here quickly. As soon as Jade Wave landed in the air, she immediately saw the three great saints of the demon race. She almost fainted, but when she saw Bei Xian, she was surprised because she only knew of the great ancestor, but had never seen her before. However, just 3 demon race great sages were enough to make her feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. She stood in the air and didn't dare to move. However, what puzzled Jade Wave was that the 3 demon race great sages didn't even look at her. They all held their breath and looked at the sky, treating her as nothing. While Jade Wave was at a loss, Little White Dragon's voice came. Jade Wave was slightly stunned and didn't move. Bitch! Little White Dragon was angry and shouted, "These are my good friends. They came specially to save me. Why aren't you coming over to greet them?" "Yes, darling Xiao." Jade Wave panicked and hurried over. Hearing Jade Wave call Little White Dragon darling Xiao, Xiao Hua's face was a little embarrassed. He instantly thought of Fairy Jing and felt bitter in his heart. Hee hee. Little White Dragon proudly pointed at Jade Wave and said, "Big brothers, this is Little One's wife. Little brother took her in when I was in Bai Qingyu. When little brother was suppressed in the Heavenly Dam water prison, she took care of little brother. Seeing that she was so attentive, little brother took her. And little brother escaped from the Heavenly Dam water prison. It was also her credit. Come, this is..." Little White Dragon first pointed at Xiao Hua and was about to introduce him. Then he remembered and scolded, "This is the real Xiao Hua, Daoist Xiao. You don't have to call me darling Xiao in the future." "Yes, darling Xiao." Jade Wave answered naturally. However, her face immediately flushed red and she looked at Little White Dragon with some fear. "Bitch, what did I tell you?" Little White Dragon felt that he had lost face and scolded, "Call me." At this point, Little White Dragon rubbed his nose like Xiao Hua. Forget it, he had called himself Xiao many times in the past 200 years. He had forgotten that he didn't have a name. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "You are this Xiao's brother in tribulation. You also helped this Xiao block the calamity of suppression for 200 years. So what if your surname is Xiao? How about I call you Xiao Bai?" Little White Dragon was a member of the dragon race and had always regarded women as nothing. He could scold Jade Wave at will, but this didn't mean that he was stupid. On the contrary, his experience and the inheritance of the dragon race from the fire dragon's soul allowed him to understand more. He had seen Xiao Hua grow from a qi condensation cultivator to a high-grade cultivator that even he didn't know the depth of. Now that Xiao Hua was able to remain calm in front of a great sage of the demon race, he naturally guessed Xiao Hua's cultivation base. A human Grand Ascension stage cultivator called him a brother in tribulation and even asked him to take his surname. How could Little White Dragon not know to climb up the ladder? He didn't pay any special respects and only smiled casually as he replied, "Hee hee, thank you, big brother." He then pointed at Xiao Hua and said, "This is Xiao Hua, Daoist Master Xiao. Greetings, Daoist Master Xiao." Jade Wave's expression tensed up as she respectfully saluted. Her posture was very standard and was the etiquette of a human woman. It seemed that she had worked hard before. Xiao Hua smiled and raised a hand to help Jade Wave up. "You are Xiao Bai's wife and my sister-in-law. From now on, we are a family, so there's no need to be too polite." "Yes, Daoist Master." Jade Wave's heart was finally at ease upon hearing Xiao Hua mention a family. Some of her previous worries had been answered. "These are all my good friends." Xiao Bai naturally couldn't recognize all of Xiao Hua's clones, so it wasn't convenient for him to introduce them at this time. He simply pointed at the clones and said with a smile, "I'll introduce them to you in the future. Greetings, uncles." Jade Wave saluted again, even though she really didn't understand what these so-called uncles meant. Get up." Feng Wu and the others laughed. Xiao Bai is really lucky. After being suppressed, he can actually find a beautiful woman to serve him. Not to mention fellow Daoist Xiao, even we are jealous. Hee hee, this is where my charm lies. Big brothers, you can't be jealous. Xiao Bai's tone was very similar to Xiao Hua's. He even touched his nose and said, "Ha ha ha." Feng Wu and the others couldn't help but laugh again. You really boast shamelessly. Little White, stand at the side. Xiao Hua and the other clones finished laughing, and then they instructed. Yes, big brother. Xiao Bai pulled Jade Wave and hurriedly stood beside Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua raised his head, looked at Bai Xian, and asked, Senior, Xiao Bai was suppressed by you for no reason for 200 years. How do you think you should compensate him? This is my fault. Xiao Bai, whatever compensation you want, just say it. I'll agree to it. Bai Xian saw with her own eyes that the only bloodline of the Sea God clan had an affair with Little White Dragon. Moreover, Jade Wave still had Little White Dragon's bloodline in her bosom. She also had Sea God's bloodline. This Little White Dragon was originally her family, so why would she be stingy? Even without Xiao Hua saying it, she was willing to agree to any condition of Little White Dragon. Chapter 4408. How could Xiao Hua not know what Bai Xian was thinking? He smiled and said, This condition is too good for you, Senior. How about this? I have a condition that I hope Senior and the 3 great saints will agree to. Oh. The rock was surprised. He tilted his head and looked at Bai Xian before asking Xiao Hua, What is Daoist Zhao's condition? I want Little White to be the Dragon King of the West Sea. Xiao Hua said word by word. Impossible. The flying feather space beast shouted, not to mention the North Sea Dragon King Ao Hong, even if Ao Qian died, the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas is still the ruler of the West Sea. Even without the palace, there is still the Dragon Island. Even the second great saint of the demon race, the black-armored Pentaceratops, doesn't dare to say that he can be the ruler of the West Sea. How can we agree to this? What you can't do, I can do it. The black-armored Pentaceratops can't be the ruler of the West Sea, but Little White can. Because I want Little White to be the ruler of the West Sea. Xiao Hua lightly said, I want you to agree that if one day Little White wants to be the ruler of the West Sea, you can only agree and not oppose. The rock, flying feather space beast, and the 5-colored sea god shell looked at each other. They then cautiously looked at Bai Xian, but unfortunately, they couldn't see anything from her face. After a while, the rock smiled and said, The ruler of the West Sea is not something we can decide. Since Daoist Xiao has such an intention, I will naturally do my best to help you accomplish it. It can also be considered as compensation for Xiao Bai. Yes, I also agree. The flying feather space beast also agreed. Only the 5-colored sea god shell didn't say anything. Of course, it was not that he didn't want to agree, but because Bai Xian was behind him, he didn't dare to make a decision on his own. Daoist Zhao's thoughts are also my thoughts. Bai Xian finally revealed a smile. However, I still hope that Bai Bo can be the Empress of the West Sea Dragon Palace. This is Little White's matter, I can't agree on his behalf. Xiao Hua replied with a smile, There are 7 great sages in the 1,000 Devils Sacred Realm. Now, there are 4 great sages here, and with this Xiao, the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, this Xiao doesn't believe that the Dragon Emperor of the West Sea Dragon Palace can't change hands. Bai Xian smiled bitterly. Looking at Jade Wave's cute and lovable appearance, Bai Xian understood that even if Little White Dragon kicked her away, she would still crawl back to Little White Dragon's side. Needless to say, if Little White Dragon became the Dragon King of the West Sea Dragon Palace, if Jade Wave did not establish his might, how could he expect Jade Wave to cause trouble with Little White Dragon? However, Bai Xian also understood that as a Little White Dragon of the Dragon Clan, it was naturally attractive to the females of the Demon Clan. It was only because he had suppressed him in the Heavenly Dam Water Prison for 200 years that Jade Wave had the chance to pester Little White Dragon. Otherwise, Who knew how many wives and concubines little white dragon would have had in these 200 years? However, Bei Xian had no other choice. Because of her mistake, because of the divine punishment, only Jade Wave and the child in her womb were left of the sea god's bloodline. Moreover, if Jade Wave became the queen of the West Sea Dragon Palace, it would be extremely beneficial to the Shell clan's reproduction in the four seas. Therefore, she gave an extremely rare smile. Looking at Little White Dragon, she asked, "Shao Bai, if you agree to my conditions, I will definitely do my best to make you the master of the West Sea." "Who are you?" Little White Dragon naturally had eyes but could not see. He glanced at Bei Xian, and asked disdainfully. "I'm not human." Bei Xian, smiled and said, "I'm from the Shell clan, and also, the great saint of the demon clan, the ancestor of the five-colored sea god Shell. Similarly, the other great saints also call me ancestor. Also, it was my idea to capture you and imprison you here." "You should." Little White was about to fly into a rage when Jade Wave, who was beside him, hurriedly hugged his arm and said anxiously, "Darling Shao." Bei Xian, ignored Little White's anger and said again, "Spiritual Master Shao also said that this is your compensation. Moreover, I also agreed that as long as you are willing, you can do whatever you want in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm." "Hee, so good." Little White Dragon pinched his chin and looked at Bei Xian, with a lustful gaze. Just as he was about to speak, Xiaohua frowned and transmitted his voice, "Little White Dragon, don't be rash." Little White Dragon could ignore Bei Xian's temptation, but he could not ignore Xiaohua's reprimand. His heart trembled, and he drooled. He said in all seriousness, "Ancestor, you are thinking too much. Previously, this junior hated Bai Qingyu to the bone, and wished that I could eat the flesh of those three demon kings and drink their blood. However, since my wife has taken care of me, what more can this junior ask for? Perhaps the reason why Ancestor captured this junior to Bai Qingyu was to fulfill this junior's fate with my wife. This junior can't thank senior enough." As he spoke, Little White Dragon tidied his clothes and bowed to Bei Xian, saying, "Junior Shao Bai greets Ancestor." "Damn it." Xiaohua saw how Little White Dragon acted with ease and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. This Little White Dragon is really something. No matter if it is young grass or old shells, they all like his glib tongue. Although Bei Xian's sea god bloodline had been stolen, she hadn't lost much of her abilities. Moreover, she was the ancestor of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. As a descendant of the Red Sea Domain's royal family, how could she not have some means to control the Thousand Demons' sacred realm? Now that she likes Little White Dragon and is thinking about her lost bloodline, the chances of Little White Dragon sitting on the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace increased by 30%. Little White Dragon has the fire dragon soul of the West Sea Dragon Palace and can control the dragon throne of the West Sea. This is 20%. I am the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, and I can be said to be famous in the four seas. I should be able to fight against 20%. This gives me a 70% chance. As for the remaining 30%, the Dragon Palace of the Three Seas will take 10%, and the Immortal Palace will take 20%. It seems like it is only a matter of time before Little White Dragon sits on the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Good, good, good. Bei Xian said good 3 times in a row. She waved her hand and said, "Good child, come over and stand beside me. When this matter is over, you can go with old ancestor. Your strength is much weaker than Ao Hong's. After I help you increase your strength, you can rightfully become the master of the West Sea Dragon Palace." "Many thanks, old ancestor." Little White Dragon stood up with a smile but did not go to Bei Xian's side. He said, "Junior and Big Brother have not seen each other for hundreds of years. Junior will be following old ancestor in the future. It is better for me to get closer to Big Brother first. Although we are not blood related, we have lived and died together. It is better than being blood related." Little White Dragon naturally did not know about the matter between Bei Xian and Bei Ming. However, his words immediately touched Bei Xian-er's heart. Bei Xian-er's tears immediately gushed out. She said repeatedly, "Good child, good child. I am relieved that Biyao can find such a loving husband like you. Damn it, what is this?" The flying feather and eye void beast at the side rolled his eyes. Little white dragon was lustful by nature. Where was the shadow of a loving husband? However, he had never seen Bei Xian-er so fond of any demon in the thousand demons sacred realm. Even the five-colored sea god shell was not good. After little white dragon finished speaking, Xiao Hua glanced at the golden-winged great peng bird and the five-colored sea god shell. He waved his hand and threw Bai Qingyu's demon king Bai Qing, shrouding sky ridge's demon king Peng Jun, and ancient Bell Mountain's demon king Ni Quan out of Shenhua continent. The three demon kings landed in mid-air and looked around. They immediately pounced in front of Bei Xian-er and shouted, "Old ancestor, you have to make the decision for us." Bei Xian-er's face was full of smiles, but when she saw the three demon kings, her face turned cold again. She didn't even say a word and just looked at them coldly. Old ancestor. Bai Qing still couldn't see the situation clearly. Although Ni Quan had never seen Bei Xian-er, he had heard a lot from Bai Qing. Now he saw Bei Xian-er's unkind expression and then looked at Xiao Hua and the other clones who were more arrogant than the three great sages. Little white dragon was even more arrogant. How could he not know what to do? There was no need for the flying feather and eye void beast to give him a signal. He turned around without hesitation and pounced in front of Xiao Hua. He kowtowed and shouted, "Spiritual Master Xiao, this is all my fault. I was blinded by greed. I wanted to take senior strength in the hidden immortal continent under my command. This is completely my greed. I am willing to atone for my sins. As long as senior can spare my life, I am willing to agree to anything." After speaking, Ni Quan fell in the air and didn't say another word. Ni Quan naturally understood better than Bai Qing and Peng Jun. He was just using Xiao Hua's reputation to attract human cultivators. He wanted to use Shui Mingzi's hand to establish his own force in the hidden immortal continent. Compared to Bai Qing and Peng Jun, his crime was the lightest. Moreover, everything was achieved with the help of Shui Mingzi and other human cultivators. He himself didn't have any direct fault. He could even push everything to Shui Mingzi. However, this was also Ni Quan's cleverness. He already understood that Xiao Hua knew everything, so he took the initiative to take the blame. Even if Xiao Hua didn't think highly of him, at least he wouldn't blame everything on him. Looking at Peng Jun of the sky concealing ridge, he obviously didn't have Ni Quan's servility. Although Peng Jun already understood when Ni Quan turned around, he still hesitated and looked at the expression of the golden-winged rock. How could the golden-winged rock give him any hint? After Ni Quan finished speaking, Peng Jun also turned his head and bowed. Junior knows he was wrong. Please punish me. Old ancestor. Only now did Bai Qing wake up and look at Bei Xian-er. But his eyes were still full of confusion. He really didn't understand. How could the old ancestor, who was more powerful than the 6 great saints of the demon clan, be defeated by Xiao Hua of the human clan? However, when his gaze fell on the 5-colored seashell beside Bei Xian-er, he saw that the 5-colored seashell had lost its 5-colored brilliance. He sucked in a breath of cold air. As a demon king, he naturally had a decision. He turned his head without hesitation. When he was about to kneel, his gaze swept over Bai Qing, who was snuggling up to the little white dragon. Bai Qing was stunned at first. He didn't think of anything, but he didn't dare to neglect. He knelt in front of Xiao Hua and whispered, "Junior was blinded by greed. I actually dared to suppress senior." Chapter 4409. At this point, Bai Qing suddenly stopped, as if he had realized something. He lifted his body slightly, as if he wanted to look in Bai Bo's direction. However, he only lifted his body for a moment before stopping again. With this lift and stop, Bai Qing's thoughts were clear, and he figured out the cause of this matter. At this moment, his heart was more assured than Ni Quan and Peng Jun. With Bai Bo by Little White Dragon's side, how could his life be in danger? Senior, this is all Junior's fault. Bai Qing didn't dare to mention Bai Xian, and only poured dirty water on himself. I shouldn't have tortured Senior's substitute. Moreover, Junior shouldn't have. Bai Qing really didn't know how to defame himself. After all, he was doing things for Bai Xian, and he really didn't have any plans of his own. Junior's father deserves to die. Bai Bo naturally knew her father's character. Seeing her father like this, and thinking about Bai Xian's words, Bai Bo knew what Xiaohua needed. She hurriedly flew over and knelt in the air. Although her abdomen wasn't particularly swollen, she still deliberately slowed down her movements, appearing very careful and clumsy. She said pitifully, even if he has something to ask Daoist, he can't suppress Daoist substitute and suffer the pain of being refined by the fire pillar every day. This crime is already deserving of death. He shouldn't have flaunted in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, or even the hidden Immortal continent to tarnish Daoist's name. This is even more deserving of death. Especially, for the sake of Daoist, who knows how many humans and demons have lost their lives. Although my Bai Qingyu's demons have all died in this battle, but my Bai Qingyu's demons deserve to die. Xiaohua's face was as heavy as water, and he didn't say much. He had already killed nearly 1,000,000 demons, and wiped out Bai Qingyu. At this moment, he also had the intention to kill Demon King Bai Qing, but, for Bai Qing's sake, he couldn't really kill her. Moreover, it seemed like this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed on the surface. Bai Bo begged again, but Junior also knows that my father isn't a human, and his thoughts aren't as sharp as a human's. Many things can only be understood after the fact. When he was in Bai Qingyu demon realm, he was influenced by the other demons. Even the matters in the Heavenly Dam water prison were all handled by the juniors. Junior knew that father was in the wrong, so when Senior was being interrogated under the Heavenly Dam water prison fire pillar, Junior was very lenient and wanted to make up for father's mistake. I hope Senior can spare my father's life on account of this Junior serving Senior's substitute for over 100 years. This Junior is willing to agree on behalf of my father and offer the Bai Qingyu demon realm to Senior as an apology. Damn it. Hearing Jadewave's words, Ni Quan involuntarily cursed in his heart. This little seashell, although he didn't mention a name, his words were all hinting at this king. Especially this Bai Qingyu. The demons were all killed by the humans, and the terrain of this place changed drastically. It must have been a battle between the great sages of my race and the humans. Bai Qingyu must have been trampled to the point of no return. She naturally didn't feel any burden by offering Bai Qingyu to the humans. But what about my ancient Bell Mountain? That's my painstaking effort for who knows how many years. However, it was only an instant before Ni Quan's thoughts changed rapidly. He thought to himself, Jadewave dared to offer Bai Qingyu to the humans, so why wouldn't I? My ancient Bell Mountain is surrounded by ferocious demon kings, and they are even more dangerous than Bai Qingyu. Even if the humans occupy the ancient Bell Mountain, they might not be able to defend it. Damn it, my life is more important now. Besides, now that the human army isn't here, they must have gone to attack the ancient Bell Mountain and concealed Sky Ridge. How can my ancient Bell Mountain be a match for those ferocious human armies? Thinking of this, Ni Quan cried out, unwilling to fall behind, that's right. This junior also has the same thoughts. This junior's sins are truly too grave. This junior is willing to offer the ancient Bell Mountain to Senior to atone for my sins. The moment Ni Quan spoke, Peng Jun's nose was about to become crooked from anger. His originally bent body couldn't help but straighten up. This was truly bullying a demon. He was merely interrogating a 5th-grade essence energy human, and when he was interrogating, he didn't even dare to speak loudly for fear of scaring this human until he lost his memories. He had tormented himself for several hundred years, and not only did he not get anything out of him, it was all for naught. Instead, he had to hand over his tens of thousands of years of foundation to the humans. How could he accept this? Besides, behind him was the demon race's #1 great sage. If he relented, where would the golden-winged great rock's face be? Looking at Xiaohua again, he really laughed out loud. The more he looked at Jade Wave, the more he liked her. She was truly a tactful little lass. Xiaohua actually didn't think too much. He just wanted to squeeze out some benefits from the 3 demon kings, or perhaps from the 3 demon race great sages. But this little lass was great. Not only did she serve little white dragon well and repay him with her body, she even handed over her ancestral inheritance to him. This made him, who originally wanted to be ruthless to the 3 great demon kings, how could he bear to do it? However, looking at Peng Jun's appearance, Xiaohua smiled slightly and asked, "You are the demon king of Concealed Sky Ridge, right? Why, you look a little unconvinced." Junior is Peng Jun. Facing Xiaohua, a human Grand Ascension stage expert, even though Peng Jun felt wronged, he still had respect for the strong. He straightened his body and bowed slightly, saying respectfully, "Junior feels that." Junior was wrong. "Senior, please punish me." However, Junior didn't know at all. He was Senior's substitute, and Junior is the demon king of Concealed Sky Ridge. If I want to do something, I don't dare to have too many misgivings. If Senior's punishment is too heavy, Junior feels. Xiaohua's face turned cold, and Peng Jun immediately felt his entire body turn cold. A wave of fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Xiaohua's voice once again appeared in his ears, and even in his heart, although the one you suppressed was Xiaobai. But the one you really wanted to suppress was me. Think about it, if we humans suppressed your race's great sage, how would you react? Xiaobai is like me. Suppressing Xiaobai is suppressing me. If I don't wash away my humiliation with blood, how can I get rid of it? But. Peng Jun knew what Xiaohua said was true, but he felt that he was really wronged. Xiaohua glanced at the golden-winged rock, feeling a little puzzled. Because of the 3 demon kings' intentions, apart from Peng Jun's, he already knew the other 2 demon kings' intentions. Moreover, Xiaohua also understood that the 3 demon kings must have other backers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to make a move on Dragon Island's Dragon Master. But from the golden-winged rock's reaction, this demon race's first great sage didn't seem to know at all. Sage Peng. Thinking of this, Xiaohua simply ignored Peng Jun, looking at the golden-winged rock, and asked indifferently, "Do you know about this?" The golden-winged rock raised his brows, his eyes flashing with golden light, and replied disdainfully, "This sage doesn't know about this." If it was this sage's intention, how could this sage let Concealed Sky Ridge take the blame? If it were Ni Quan, he would definitely accept the golden-winged rock's words and take the blame himself. But Peng Jun was different. He looked at the golden-winged rock in surprise, and asked curiously, is this not Sage Peng's intention? Damn it, of course this sage doesn't know." The golden-winged rock scolded, "This sage doesn't know Daoist Shao, and has no intention of coveting the human race's power. Why would this sage instruct you? That's strange." Peng Jun scratched his head and said, "This junior received Song Yu Tian's order to interrogate a dragon that was with Senior Shao. This junior rushed to Bai Qingyu. Where's the beast skin for the message?" The golden-winged rock was a little angry and asked. Peng Jun smiled bitterly and said, "If you need a reply to a message, you will send 2 pieces of beast skin. One of the beast skin has a message, and it also has the symbol of Saint Peng. After this junior reads the beast skin, it will disappear. The other beast skin is blank. After this junior writes it, I activate my demon energy and it will fly away. If there's no need for a reply, only 1 beast skin will be sent." "Damn it, you're really stupid." The golden-winged rock scolded, "You've been used by other demons, and you still think you're loyal to me, Peng Jun stiffened his neck and said, "That beast's skin has your mark, so of course this junior thinks it's your instruction. How dare you talk back?" The golden-winged roc was furious. He flapped his left wing and was about to hit Peng Jun. But when he saw the stubborn look on Peng Jun's face, he sighed and lowered his wing. Although the golden-winged great roc was innately strong and intelligent, it was also stubborn and arrogant. It was the same for itself. It really couldn't force its juniors to be stronger than it. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and watched the farce. He could not understand if what the golden-winged roc said was true. However, Reverend Yun was a body condensed from the dragon cleansing pool in the folded emerald legacy land. If the golden-winged roc obtained Yun's body, it would be very beneficial for him to step into the supreme realm and break through the void. Therefore, Xiao Hua could not rule out the possibility that the golden-winged roc was just putting on a show. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Whether Sky Obscuring Ridge did it intentionally or not, this matter has tainted my name, and Sky Obscuring Ridge must pay the price. Either Peng Jun dies, or he can be spared from death, but he cannot escape punishment. Sky Obscuring Ridge must choose one. You have to pay the price for offending an expert." Feng Wu smiled and said, "Reverend Xiao is my good friend. You can see that Reverend Xiao is my friend. Peng Jun, don't you feel honored that you have given Sky Obscuring Ridge to me after offending me?" Just as Feng Wu said, although Peng Jun's submission to Xiao Hua was an apology to a Mahayana cultivator, it was, after all, a humiliation to the human race. Not only Peng Jun's face, but also the golden-winged roc's face. If Peng Jun did it intentionally, Feng Wu would not say anything no matter what Xiao Hua did. But obviously, Peng Jun was being used by some demon race. Since Feng Wu was a 7 stars great saint, he could not help but feel a little sympathy for Peng Jun. Therefore, he also spoke. Feng Wu's words were fundamentally different from Xiao Hua's. Peng Jun had given Sky Obscuring Ridge to Feng Wu, a 7 stars great saint of the demon race. It was not a humiliation, but an honor. Chapter 44:10. At this point, if Peng Jun still hesitates and doesn't make a decision, then he doesn't deserve to be the demon king of Shrouding Sky Ridge. Peng Jun hurriedly bows and says respectfully, "Junior is willing to offer the foundation of Shrouding Sky Ridge as thanks for Junior's offense." Hee hee. Xiao Hua smiles faintly and says, "This is just this Zhao's idea, I haven't asked Xiao Bai. If he isn't willing, then this Xiao will still not agree." "Yes, yes." Ni Quan hurriedly smiles, "Junior understands, so I ask immortal friend Xiao to kindly accept it." "Little White, what do you think?" Xiao Hua turns to ask Little White Dragon. Little White Dragon hasn't opened his mouth and is met with Bai Bo's pleading gaze. To be honest, Little White Dragon being suppressed in Bai Qingyu is not so much suffering, but rather enjoying. Demon King Bai Qing gave his daughter to him, how can he have the nerve to take Bai Qing's life? As long as he doesn't take Bai Qing's life, then Peng Jun and Ni Quan won't lose their lives. Moreover, Little White Dragon is using Xiao Hua's name in Bai Qingyu, so Little White Dragon can't speak. Therefore, Little White Dragon says with a smile, "This matter will be decided by Big Brother. Junior has no objections. And, this is also good." Xiao Hua nods, "This Xiao will accept Bai Qingyu, Ancient Bell Mountain and Shrouding Sky Ridge on behalf of Xiao Bai. This Xiao won't take your lives." "Many thanks, Senior." Ni Quan, Bai Qing and Peng Jun finally let out a sigh of relief and bow in unison. Ni Quan cleverly says, "Junior will rush back to Ancient Bell Mountain and restrain Junior's boy. Don't block Senior's disciple's tiger's prestige. Don't be anxious." Xiao Hua says coldly, "You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Although you have already revealed your demon realm, this matter is only known to the 1,000 demon sacred realm demon race. I'm afraid it won't be able to clear this Xiao's name in hidden immortal continent. This Xiao still has to think about how to punish you. Senior." Bai Qing really wants to cry but has no tears. He fiercely glares at Ni Quan and says, "What should we do to satisfy Senior? Could it be that we have to offer a humble apology?" Xiao Hua pinched his chin and said with a grin, "That's a good idea. I'll let you carry the thorns from here and go to my sect to ask for forgiveness. The humans of the hidden immortal continent will definitely know about this." If Bai Qing had arms, he would definitely slap himself in the face. He was really too talkative. Speaking of punishment, Xiao Hua actually didn't have any plans in his heart. He just felt that it would be somewhat satisfying for the 3 Yao kings to take out the Yao realm to atone for their crimes. But if he really did say it, he would be in a bit of a difficult position. Bringing a bramble and asking for punishment was nothing more than a joke. Suddenly, Xiao Hua had an idea. He looked at the 3 monster kings with a smile and asked, "Do you know about the sutra seeking extreme bliss?" "I know." Bai Qing answered honestly, "Previously, I, Bai Qingyu, had a demon who was duped to go over and become the Buddhist sect's merit. Junior's brother also went to seek revenge for this matter and has yet to return." Very good. Xiao Hua nodded, "It's good that you all know. I've already killed your brother." "What?" Bai Qing was shocked and looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. "Humph." Xiao Hua said coldly, "Otherwise, how would this Xiao know that Bai Qingyu suppressed Xiao Bai?" Sigh. Bai Qing finally understood the root of the matter. Xiao Hua said again, "You don't have to hate this Xiao. You all should go and find out who instigated your brother to go to the Pure Land world. They are the main culprits." Yes, this junior understands. What else could Bai Qing say? Now is the right time. Bai Qing, this is an excellent reason. You knew that your brother was killed by the sutra seeking extreme bliss monk, so you went to seek revenge with Peng Jun and Ni Quan. Do a round with those monks and give them some merit. Xiao Hua says with a smile, "After this round, this Xiao will no longer pursue your sins." Okay. Bai Qing didn't even think and agreed without hesitation. On the contrary, Ni Quan was bewildered. He hesitated and said, "Senior, we are all Yao kings with 8th grade essence energy. Isn't this acting too fake? Go." Xiao Hua waved his hand, "You will know when you go." Yes, this junior understands. When Ni Quan heard this, he immediately understood. He then asked, "Does Senior have any other instructions?" "Chun Zong can't be touched." Xiao Hua nodded and replied, "That fire ape can't be harmed. As for the rest, you all do as you see fit. Of course, the prerequisite is that you all don't get killed by that pig." Pig? Peng Jun was shocked, since when did the sutra seeking extreme bliss have a pig? If this junior encounters danger, can I mention Senior's name? Ni Quan thought more than Peng Jun and asked with a smile. "You all are thinking too much." Xiao Hua laughed, "Once you mention this Xiao's name, that pig will slack off. You all just have to torture him." Yes, this junior understands. Ni Quan nodded vigorously and said, "This junior will definitely help brother by take revenge and stop the sutra seeking extreme bliss." Go. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Go to your respective Yao realms first, then prepare to head to the Pure Land world." "Many thanks, Senior." Ni Quan, Peng Jun, and Bai Qing bowed respectfully. Just as Ni Quan and Peng Jun, the 2 demon kings, were about to move, Xiao Hua suddenly said, "Oh, right, you're not allowed to take a single item from the 2 demon realms." Ni Quan and Peng Jun, the 2 demon kings, swayed in the air and almost fell to the ground. With just a thought, everything turned into nothingness. After the 2 Yao kings left, Xiao Hua turned to look at Wu and Wenchu and said with a smile, "I'll have to trouble you 2 to call back the Fortune Gate's disciples." "No problem, we'll be back soon." Wu and Wenchu nodded. Their figures flew up and swept past Ni Quan and Peng Jun. They swept up the 2 demon kings and left. Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to call back the 200,000 human disciples, the golden-winged Great Peng was slightly puzzled, but he couldn't be bothered to care about the trivial matters of the heaven-concealing ridge. He looked at Feng Wu and said with a smile, "Feng Sheng, you're a 7-star great saint of our demon race. How can you not go to the Great Holy Hall after reaching the 1,000 Beasts sacred grounds? Moreover, with the addition of Feng Sheng, our demon race already has 7 great saints. We still have to arrange the seats for these 7 great saints." "Hee, Peng Sheng is too polite." Feng Wu laughed and said, "This saint has already fought with Peng Sheng before. If Peng Sheng hadn't broken through his bottleneck, this saint would have had a chance to take the first seat. Now that Peng Sheng is not far from breaking through the void, how can this saint be his opponent?" "Ha, Feng Sheng, you should go." Flying Feather Void Beast laughed and said, "This saint wants to see the surprised expression of the profound armored Pentaceratops when he sees Feng Sheng. That guy has been eyeing Peng Sheng's position for a long time. He didn't expect that. He wouldn't even be able to keep his position as the second great saint." Hearing the 3 great saints' words, the Pentaceratops seashell felt bitter. Although he was still a great saint of the demon race, without the bloodline of the sea god, he might not even be able to compare to the nether demonic dragon spider. However, who would care about the Pentaceratops seashell's feelings at this time? The 2 great saints only invited Feng Wu to the Great Holy Hall. Feng Wu thought for a moment, then discussed with Xiao Hua in his mind. He turned and bowed to Xiao Hua, saying, "Fellow Immortal Xiao, thank you for taking care of me before. Now that I've reached the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm, it's time for me to make a trip to the Great Holy Hall. Let's part ways here." Xiao Hua naturally knew that Feng Wu wanted to see the Great Holy Hall, and also wanted to see if he could find the mastermind behind Peng Jun's orders. He smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Feng Sheng is a great saint of the demon race, so of course he has to go to the Great Holy Hall. This Xiao will send Feng Sheng off. Fellow immortals, we'll meet again someday." After bowing to the Devis, Feng Wu spread his wings and soared into the sky, heading in the direction of the Great Holy Hall. "Ancestor, we'll take our leave." The golden-winged Great Peng, the flying feather void beast, and the Pentaceratops seashell didn't dare to delay. After bowing to Bei Xian, they also left with Feng Wu. Seeing the 4 great saints leave, Bei Xian waved her hand, and a yin and yang bracelet appeared in her hand. She gave it to Xiao Hua and said in a low voice, "This is some rare treasure of the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. It's useless to me, and the Dao sect has many methods. Daoist, please keep it first." Xiao Hua looked at the yin and yang bracelet in front of him. He knew clearly that this was a gift from Bei Xian, to thank him for returning the rainbow conch seashell. The things inside were definitely precious. Unfortunately, Bei Xian, was too eager to show off. Even now, she still didn't want to say it out loud. Thus, Xiao Hua didn't refuse. He waved his hand and sent the yin and yang bracelet into the space. He said, "Thank you, Senior." Xiao Bai, Jade Wave. Bei Xian, looked at the little white dragon and Jade Wave, and said, "I'm leaving. Come with me." "Yes, old ancestor." Jade Wave agreed without even thinking. However, the little white dragon shook his head and said, "Old ancestor, Junior still wants to talk to Xiao Hua about some things. Let's wait for a few days." "See." Jade Wave stared blankly and immediately understood. She also hurriedly nodded and said, "Indeed. Old ancestor, you go first. Boy will bring Xiao Hua over in a few days." "Okay." Seeing the little white dragon being so sentimental, how could Bei Xian, blame him? She transmitted a few words to Jade Wave, and then nodded towards Xiao Hua. Her figure flashed, and she disappeared without a trace. Seeing that his enemies were all gone, Xiao Hua looked at the blazing sun that had already passed its peak, and then looked at the mess on the ground. He couldn't help but sigh again. "Big brother." The little white dragon said with a smile on his face, "It's all Junior's fault. I shouldn't have used Big Brother's name to move around the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm in the hidden Immortal Continent. I've caused trouble for you." Xiao Hua floated in front of the little white dragon, stretched out his arms, and said with a smile, "Between you and me, is there still a need to say these words? Your thoughts of using my name to move around, how could I not know? Big brother." The little white dragon was very happy in his heart. He also stretched out his arms and hugged Xiaohua. Xiaohua patted the little white dragon's back and said, "I originally wanted to give you some opportunities, but looking at that old ancestor, she also had the same intention. She's from the shell race, and also the ancestor of several great sages. Presumably, the things she prepared would be more suitable for you. I can only give you the benefits of the West Sea Dragon Palace Lord." Chapter 44:11. "Ha, big brother." Little White Dragon also patted Xiaohua's back and said with a smile, "Little brother should suffer a bit for you. You are too polite." Seeing that Xiaohua was so unguarded against Little White Dragon, Jadewave's eyeballs were about to fall out. She understood very well that as long as it was a monster, as long as it was an adult, it wouldn't let other monsters get close to it. Especially the higher one's strength, the more vigilant they were. Because as long as they got close, they might be killed by other monsters if they weren't on guard. If the monster race was like this, then the human race was even more so. How could they be like Xiaohua and Little White Dragon, one dragon and one human hugging like brothers? Of course, the two identical Xiaohus hugging made Jadewave drunk. Unfortunately, the following sentence immediately shocked Jadewave. Because Little White Dragon said with a smile, "However, little brother likes it. Presumably, the West Sea Dragon Palace has many beautiful sea creatures." Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed and loosened his arms. "This is not something I can control. You have to ask Jadewave and Ancestor. She dares to control." Little White Dragon glared at Jadewave, but Jadewave acted as if she didn't see it. Instead, she walked in front of Xiaohua and took out a heaven and earth ring from her bosom. She respectfully handed it to Xiaohua and said, "Big brother, this is the corpse and blood clothes left behind after Li Jing self-detonated in the Heavenly Dam water prison. I didn't know that Li Jing was Big Brother's lover, so I offended you that day. It had to be said that as long as it was a woman, no matter if it was a human or a demon, they were all exquisite." Jadewave simply didn't argue with Little White Dragon and only spoke to Xiaohua. She knew that Little White Dragon trusted Xiaohua the most. She only needed to curry favor with Xiaohua. She simply didn't need to compete with other women for Little White Dragon to obediently listen to her words. At the very least, Little White Dragon wouldn't dare to neglect or abandon her. Sure enough, Xiaohua saw that Jadewave was so honest that she even spoke of her malice towards Fairy Jing. He smiled slightly. Although his smile was extremely bitter, the praise in his eyes was obvious. After receiving the cosmic bracelet, Xiaohua did not release his spiritual force to explore it. He stared at the cosmic bracelet for a long time, as if he was looking at the scene on Heartbreak Mountain from a long time ago. From this moment onwards, there will be no distractions in my heart, no emotions to depend on, no heart to depend on, no soul to return to. However, when people are in front of me, there is no longer a shadow in my eyes. A journey on the mountain, a journey on the water, I walk towards the place of loneliness, the shadow of the night invisible. The wind blows, the snow blows, the noise shatters my heart's dream, there is no such sound in this world. Fairy Jing's singing, the setting sun, and the red clouds in the sky seemed to be vivid in his mind. Fairy Jing's delicate body trembled slightly as she opened her mouth. The scene of the unforgettable love water turning into a stream of water and falling into her mouth was revived. "You? Who are you? Why did he look so familiar? Where is this?" Fairy Jing's curious and puzzled eyes appeared in front of Xiaohua again. "Oh, all right. Although I don't know who you are, looking at you makes me feel at ease. My name is Li Jing, and my Buddhist name is Fairy Jing. I'm in charge of a seaside country in a corner of the hidden Immortal continent. If fellow Daoist arrives at the seaside that day, you can come to my country for a chat. Farewell." Fairy Jing's unhurried voice sounded in Xiaohua's ear again. That distant figure was so far away, and that faintly discernible voice was so faintly discernible. At this moment, it unexpectedly became an eternal farewell. In particular, the unforgettable love water. Fairy Jing deliberately wanted to forget Xiaohua, but as it happened, when she saw the little white dragon's appearance, all her feelings surfaced again. Fortune made fools of people. For Xiaohua, and also for her own mistake, Fairy Jing used her life to make up for it. Big brother. How could the little white dragon not understand the pain in Xiaohua's heart? He flew in front of Xiaohua and explained the cause of the matter. He didn't talk about Xiaohua, only muttering in a low voice, "This time, we will be separated by yin and yang. Even if I have a myriad of thoughts, they will all turn into a flower of the yellow springs. I will have no one to tell the hidden grievances in my heart." Even Jade Wave, who already knew the course of events, couldn't help but shed some tears. Even the Celestials and other clones sighed endlessly. In the end, the little white dragon said, before Fairy Jing left, she had a wish. What? Quickly say it. Xiaohua hastily raised his head and asked. As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it. This. The little white dragon smiled bitterly. Fairy Jing's request, I'm afraid Big Brother can't do it in a short time. Quickly say it. Xiaohua asked sternly. Fairy Jing only wants to reincarnate and no longer be the descendant of some monster race. She only wants to be a clean person, even if she doesn't have any cultivation and only wants to live a quiet life. The little white dragon said solemnly. AI. Xiaohua sighed, but a moment later, his eyes lit up again. He said in shock, You mean? Hee, not bad. The little white dragon laughed. Big Brother can't do it now, but he should be able to in the future. As the little white dragon spoke, between his eyebrows, in front of his dragon horn, several strands of soul surged. An extremely small dark green ball of light flew out. As soon as that ball of light appeared, it immediately wanted to dissipate. How could Xiaohua let this ball of light dissipate? He released his netherworld origin power and instantly sent this ball of light into the dark side of the space. He chose the root of the underworld fruit tree and placed it there. When he saw a transparent underworld pearl slowly appear, Fairy Jing's soul quietly fell asleep. Only then did he feel at ease and leave the space. Big Brother. The netherworld origin power was so powerful. The little white dragon had cultivated soul techniques, so how could he not sense it? He asked somewhat hesitantly. No need for the future. Xiaohua said proudly. Fairy Jing's wish can be realized by this Xiao right now. Ah. The little white dragon was stunned, and Jade Wave was even more stunned. However, Xiaohua's gaze swept over Jade Wave, and he said indifferently, This matter can only be known by people this Xiao trusts. This Xiao doesn't want others to know. Biyao smiled sweetly. With such a resourceful Big Brother and his trust in her, how could she possibly think of divulging it? Big Brother, you really are my Big Brother. You are too powerful. The little white dragon could only shake his head in admiration. He sighed and said, What kind of spirit pills have you taken in the past 200 years? I can't believe your cultivation base has reached such a level. Damn it, even if I want to impersonate you in the future, I'm afraid I can't. Then be yourself. Xiaohua said smilingly, The Dragon Emperor of the Western Ocean Dragon Palace is still waiting for you. Good, good. Hurry up and let the Dragon King of the Western Ocean wash his ass clean, and wait for me to kick him. The little white dragon laughed. With your cultivation base, you are far weaker than Ao Hong. Reverend Yun twitched his mouth and said mockingly. The little white dragon could not be compared with Reverend Yun before, and the gap between them was even greater. With a crying face, he said, Isn't it all my Big Brother's fault? Why didn't you bring your little brother? Tisk, hurry up and find that patriarch of yours. Reverend Yun said disdainfully, She might have some good ideas. Oh, don't be so hasty. Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and transmitted his voice, about the incident at Yellow Flower Ridge. Haven't you recovered your memory yet? Not completely. The little white dragon said solemnly, that seal is very powerful, and I can only break it when my overall strength has reached a certain level. Oh, if Big Brother is in a hurry, you can try to break it. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, I'm not in a hurry. Besides, this seal was made by that man. I'll try not to break it if I can, or it might affect your memory. Of course, if possible, you can ask Patriarch. She might have some ideas. She? The little white dragon was surprised. How could she possibly have some ideas? Don't ask. Xiaohua smiled mysteriously and said, just trust me. All right. Naturally, the little white dragon believed Xiaohua's words without a doubt. Let's go with Jade Wave for now. Xiaohua patted the little white dragon on the shoulder and said, when you have the overall strength, you can follow me and roam the 3 continents. All right, I'll definitely do my best for Big Brother. The little white dragon nodded vigorously, then gave Jade Wave a glare and said, hurry up and lead the way. Big Brother, I'll take my leave. Jade Wave respectfully saluted Xiaohua, then flew away with the little white dragon. All right, fellow Taoists. Seeing that the world was quiet, Xiaohua smiled and said, you all should go back and rest. Damn, this Bei Xian is too powerful, I also need to meditate. That's right, this Bai Qingyu is ours anyway. Fellow Taoists can find a place to meditate in this demon territory. Taoist Yun laughed, but then he looked into the distance and said, unfortunately, fellow Taoist Wu and the others will be back soon. Fellow Taoists should wait until you're done. Taoist Yun smiled and disappeared into the void. Archdevil Venerable Shi, celestial being, and the others also entered the void. Not long after, Taoist Wu and Wen Chu returned together. In fact, since Xiaohua appeared in Bai Qingyu, ordered 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples to attack Shrouding Sky Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain, joined forces with his clones to fight the 3 demonic beast race saints, and finally attracted the power of the divine punishment to defeat Bei Xian, it only took a few hours. The 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples had yet to reach the 2 demon territories. Taoist Wu and Wen Chu were carrying 2 demonic beast kings, and their teleportation speed was extremely fast, so they naturally could return at this time. Taoist Wu and Wen Chu were outside the great 7-colored radiance shell world. Together with Feng Wu, they held the 3 demonic beast race great saints hostage, so they didn't suffer any special injuries. Seeing the 2 clones, Xiaohua thought for a moment and said with a smile, fellow Taoist Wu, please go back and rest. I have something to say to fellow Taoist Wen Chu. All right. Taoist Wu didn't ask any more questions and returned to the void. Wen Chu was puzzled and asked, is there anything else, fellow Taoist? Xiaohua smiled and said, when the 3 demonic beast race great saints saw the 3 demonic beast kings offering Bai Qingyu, Shrouding Sky Ridge, and Ancient Bell Mountain to me, they didn't stop them. Of course, they didn't put the 3 demonic beast kings' territories in their eyes. More importantly, they felt that the 1,000 Beasts sacred realm is the demonic beast race's territory, and we humans have no place here. Even if we obtain the 3 demonic beast territories today, we will have to abandon them in the future. Therefore, if we want to control the 3 demonic beast territories, we need a transmission array. Among all the fellow Taoists, other than fellow Taoist Lei, fellow Taoist Wu, and fellow Taoist Lei are proficient in the transmission array. We will have to trouble fellow Taoists now. Chapter 44:12. So that's how it is. Wen Chu laughed. Previously, fellow Immortal Lei Ting often bragged about how powerful the transmission array he built was. I've long wanted to compete with him. Today, I'll take this opportunity to dampen his spirit. That's great. Xiaohua nodded. The Grand Cosmos shifting token is still in fellow Taoist Lei Ting's hands. However, with fellow Daoist Wu's technique, the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token doesn't seem that important anymore. After fellow Daoist builds the transmission array, you can leave behind a spiritual sense mark. After you get the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token, you can connect the two transmission arrays together. I understand. Wen Chu squinted his eyes and used the clear sight technique. He looked around and said with a smile, Bai Qingyu has been reduced to this state. I'm afraid it's not suitable to build a transmission array. Shall I go further and take a look? All right. Xiao Hua agreed. Fellow Daoist, you can start building the transmission array first. After I settle the matters here, I'll bring the other fellow Daoists to help you. Well said, well said. Wen Chu said. A cloud appeared under his feet and he flew into the distance. After Wen Chu left, Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked at the sun in the west. He sighed in his heart. He raised his hand and took out the universe bracelet with Fairy Jing's bloody clothes and remains. After looking at it for a moment, he said in a low voice, Fairy Jing, although Qing's death wasn't my fault, Qing died for me. Since Qing's soul has entered the cycle of reincarnation, it's time for her flesh and blood to be buried in peace. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua released his spiritual sense, wanting to find a place with beautiful scenery to bury her. Unfortunately, Bai Qingyu had long been destroyed. Where could he find a suitable place? Forget it. When this matter is over, I'll find a place for Fairy Jing to rest in peace. Xiao Hua sighed and put away the universe bracelet. He stood in the air and waited for the Fortune Gate's disciples. At this time, the heaven and earth origin energy within tens of thousands of miles was still chaotic. Countless strands of heaven and earth origin energy condensed into a fierce wind that rushed towards Bai Qingyu. It was the biting cold wind. Xiao Hua stood alone under the sun. His figure was elongated, and his Daoist robes fluttered in the wind. People often say that a general's success is built on the bones of 10,000 soldiers. When a cultivator cultivates to the highest level, their prestige reaches the highest level. Isn't this the same? Bai Qingyu, the Fortune Gate's disciples who had slaughtered close to 1 million demonic beasts, and the Fortune Gate's disciples who had been killed by the 1,000 sacred realm demonic beasts, had all become the bones that had created Daoist Zhao's name that had shaken the three mainlands. Although Xiao Hua had just grasped the creation realm and was gradually peering into yin and yang, he was still unable to let the souls of these pitiful disciples rest in peace. Watching the setting sun, Xiao Hua actually felt a chill down his spine. He shrunk his neck, but just as he was about to release his divine sense to check on the Fortune Gate disciples, a faint smile appeared on his face. With a wave of his hand, he brought Little Black and Little Yellow out of Xinhua continent. Daddy, Daddy. Little Black and Little Yellow both shouted and landed on Xiao Hua's shoulders. One used its tongue to lick Xiao Hua's ears while the other used its 2 claws to scratch Xiao Hua's hair. It was no different from when they were young. Hearing Goldie call him Daddy, Xiao Hua faintly smiled. He knew that the 2 little things didn't go out for nothing. Why did the 2 of you also come to Bai Qingyu? Xiao Hua raised his hand to rub the 2 little things' heads and asked with a smile. After all, time was tight, so the 2 little things only gave a rough account of what had happened in Bai Qingyu. Boy heard that Daddy was suppressed by Bai Qingyu's Beast King, so he naturally came to save Daddy. Little Yellow's mouth was fast, and he had already finished Xiao Hua's words. It took him a full hour to tell Xiao Hua everything that had happened after he and Little Black left Xiao Hua. Although the 2 little things were standing on his shoulders, and the 2 little things' 200 years of training was similar to the training of ordinary qi refinement or foundation establishment cultivators. Although there were some dangers during that period, and they had gone through several life and death situations, overall, it was more daunting than dangerous. It was a pity that he was too concerned, and Xiao Hua couldn't help but shudder. He regretted letting the 2 little things out. At the end of the story, Little Yellow suddenly asked curiously, "Oh right, Daddy, you're so powerful now, how could you be suppressed by Bai Qingyu's Beast King? That shouldn't be Daddy." Little Black didn't interrupt, and only now did he say with confidence, if I'm not wrong, it should be that dragon-shaped soul. Otherwise, there's no way we couldn't tell. Daddy said it was his good friend. Little Yellow naturally understood and said with a smile, it must be him. Xiao Hua smiled. He already knew that he was wrong. If the two little things were always by his side, Little Yellow would probably have to call him mommy. How could they tell the little white dragon apart? You guessed correctly. Xiao Hua replied, the little white dragon has successfully condensed his body. He's now called Xiao Bai. Where is he? Little Yellow jumped on Xiao Hua's shoulder and shouted, hurry up and call him out. He actually dared to lie to us. Teach him a lesson. He's not here now. Xiao Hua replied, he went to a place. When you see him again, I'm afraid you won't be able to defeat him. How can you teach him a lesson? We want to go too, we want to go too. Little Yellow shouted, Daddy, I really didn't expect there to be so many experts in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. Boy also wants to go there to cultivate. Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He thought of the bloodline inheritance and essence left behind by the Truth Listener beast and the heaven-swallowing beast after they were killed. He thought to himself, damn it, could it be that this is also a kind of karma? Is this Little Yellow and Little Black's opportunity? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, you don't have to go there. Daddy has a way to let you surpass the little white dragon. However, there's not enough time now. How about I let you cultivate after I'm done with the matters here? Okay. Little Yellow shouted and jumped on Xiao Hua's shoulder. Surpass the little white dragon, surpass the little white dragon, teach him a lesson. On the other hand, Little Black replied steadily, everything will be decided by father. Seeing the two little ones like this, Xiao Hua's mood was great. He smiled and said, Little Yellow, do you still remember Dai? Who is Dai? Little Yellow was stunned and asked curiously, should I remember? Xiao Hua smiled. When Dai hugged Little Yellow that day, Little Yellow was dying. How could it know Dai's name? Moreover, when Dai entered the space, Dai was dying, and Little Yellow was still unconscious. When Little Yellow and Little Black grew up, he separated Dai from the Shenhua continent. How could Little Yellow remember Dai? It's the girl who hugged you before you met Daddy. Xiao Hua reminded. It's also the big white goose lying beside you when you were at home. Oh, I know. Little Yellow immediately understood and asked, she's called Dai? If that's the case, she seemed to have taken care of Boy. Where did she go after that? Wait a moment. Xiao Hua smiled and sent Dai out of the Shenhua continent. Greetings, sage. As soon as Dai landed in the air, she couldn't be bothered to look elsewhere and hurriedly bowed. Get up, Dai. Take a look at who this is. Xiao Hua smiled and raised his hand to help Dai up. Dai felt a little strange, but when her gaze fell on Little Yellow, a smile immediately appeared on her face and she called out, Little Yellow? You're back. Sister Dai, so you're called Dai? Little Yellow was also familiar with Dai's aura and wagged its tail as it landed in Dai's arms. Dai instantly returned to the time when she was a child. She happily hugged Little Yellow in her arms and lovingly patted Little Yellow's head. It was rare for her to feel calm again. People were always strange. Even Dai, who was from the Flying Feather clan of the 10,000 Demon Realm, was the same. In her memory, there was always an unforgettable time. This time, whether it was due to coincidence or a cycle, but the memory of this time brought her an incomparable sense of security. Dai followed the goddess of the 10,000 Demon Realm to the Dawn Rain continent. Although there was Xian Wan's protection, there was always a feeling of being homeless. On the Dawn Rain continent, she occasionally encountered the seriously injured Little Yellow. Little Yellow's pitiful experience made Dai throw her own misery aside and wholeheartedly care for Little Yellow. It could be said that it awakened the maternal instinct in Dai-er's heart in advance. After Little Yellow left, Dai-er was still reluctant to part with it. When she saw Little Yellow again in Xiao Hua's space, the feeling of despair and anxiety in her heart suddenly disappeared. Little Yellow made her feel safe. After thousands of years passed, Dai-er became more and more scrupulous. Meeting Yuanya was love. Love was worrying about gains and losses, but it was never about safety. Even when she saw Xiao Hua again, Dai-er didn't have much of an impression of Xiao Hua. It was only because of Little Yellow that Dai-er felt at ease with Xiao Hua's strength. It was a kind of worship and respect. At this time, when Dai-er saw Little Yellow again, a special person who brought with him special memories, Dai-er's heart suddenly calmed down. It was even more tranquil than when she returned to Xian Wan's side. An indescribable sense of security filled Dai-er's heart more than ever. 2 tears of joy couldn't help but fall from the corner of Dai-er's eyes. It was not the feeling of familial love, but it was the feeling of family love that made Dai-er's body glow with a layer of holy brilliance. Sister. A drop of tear fell on Little Yellow's body. Little Yellow was startled and hurriedly looked up. When he saw Dai-er's appearance, he cried out, "What's wrong? Who bullied you? Tell me quickly, Little Black, and I will go and vent your anger for you." "Don't be afraid, Little Black and I are very powerful now. If the 2 of us can't do it, there's still Father. He's very powerful. I'm afraid he's even fiercer than the great saint of the demon race." While speaking, Little Yellow stretched out his paw and wiped away the tears on Dai-er's face. Feeling the warmth of the furry paw, Dai showed a happy smile, patted Little Yellow's head and said, "Silly child, sister is crying because of happiness. Now that Taoist Master Xiao is here, who would dare to bully sister?" Chapter 44:13. Hee, that's good, that's good. Hearing this, Goldie stretched out a claw from Dai-er's arms and shouted to Little Black, "Little Black, come here, this is Sister Dai-er. I've told you before. I know, I've seen her at home." Little Black was not as excited as Goldie. He flew closer and wagged his tail. "Greetings, Sister Dai-er." "Hello, Little Black." Dai-er replied with a smile. She did not hug Little Black. It was not that Dai-er's chest was not big enough, it was that her heart was not big enough. "Sister, where have you been for the past few hundred years? Isn't our family doing well? How did you learn to run away from home?" Goldie did not have any scruples in front of Dai-er and asked directly. Dai-er was startled. She raised her head slightly and looked at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua only looked at her with a smile and didn't answer. Dai-er's mind quickly turned. She smiled and said to Goldie, "It's a bit boring at home. Sister is going out for a walk." "Hee, that's right, it's not good to stay at home all the time." Goldie spoke quickly and said, "Little Black and I also came out, but I don't know where sister went." Dai-er was a bit speechless. She could tell Goldie what she saw from the Thousand Demon Realm to Dawn Rain Continent, but she did not want to lie to Goldie. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "After Yuanya returns, I'll let him tell you about it." "Io, Father, Yuanya is still here? Didn't he leave with his master? What about his wretched master? Is he still so lecherous?" Goldie's words could not be stopped. It was like a torrential river. How was it similar to the ferocious Di-Ting beast in the great desolate continent? "Right, how is Yuanya and that Jia Wu? It's been a few hundred years. Their children should know how to play soy sauce now, right?" Xiao Hua held his forehead and smiled bitterly. When he was young, Goldie was talkative, but Xiao Hua thought it was cute. Who would have thought that Goldie would become a chatterbox now? "Ye's master is dead. Ye is now your father's disciple." "On the contrary," Dai-er replied calmly, "Jia Wu also left Ye. If there are no accidents, she should have died a few hundred years ago. They can't have children playing soy sauce." "Ioyo. There are so many stories." Goldie was extremely excited. as if his gossipy heart had been revived. He cried out, back then, Brother Ya was completely infatuated with that Jia Wu. At this point, Goldie suddenly froze as if he had understood something. He said in surprise, Sister, you're called Brother Ya. Yeah? Ioyo, sister, how can Brother Ya be worthy of you? He was really bored. Out of 3 questions, he couldn't even answer a single one. Moreover, his cultivation was also extremely poor. Don't look for him. I think Brother Lu is not bad. He's handsome and has a glib tongue. While they were talking, a loud and clear dragon roar came from the distance. In the sky, dozens of colorful dragons flew over under the stars and moon. They were majestic, and the golden dragon in front was even more eye-catching. However, when they flew closer, a powerful aura appeared beside the golden dragon. This aura was restrained and not ostentatious, as if the owner of this aura was deliberately keeping a low profile. Even so, the aura that leaked out was enough to suppress the dragon's aura. A bloody, soul-devouring, and terrifying aura was emitted from that aura. Brother Ya? Goldie was dumbfounded. He whispered, when did this guy become so powerful? He's not just powerful. Blackie curled his lips and said, his ability to pick up girls is even higher. Xiao Hua, who was beside them, heard it clearly. He was so shocked that he almost fell from the sky. He was very surprised in his heart, damn it. Where did these 2 brats go? Where did they learn these words? The dragons were the first to arrive, but they didn't dare to approach. When they were a few miles away from Xiao Hua, they stopped and turned into their human forms. They bowed and said, Greetings, Dragon Master Xiao. Good, thank you for your hard work. Xiao Hua nodded slightly and said. Yuanya, Ao Sheng, and Ao Zhan flew over. Yuanya bowed and said, Master. N. Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya and asked, how many dragons did you kill? Not a single one. Yuanya replied, they were scared out of their wits by Master. I waved my demonic spear and they all surrendered. Good. Xiao Hua didn't ask Yuanya anymore. He waved his hand and asked Yuanya to leave. He then turned to ask Ao Sheng and Ao Zhan, what did these dragons say? Who sent them? Ao Sheng and Ao Zhan didn't dare to delay. They bowed and said, Greetings, Dragon Master. Let me tell you, they themselves don't know who gave the orders. It's not out of my expectations. Xiao Hua nodded. He wasn't surprised at all. Ao Sheng said again, let's talk about this after I return to Dragon Island and see Long Su on the island. There should be some clues. Little elder, you're too optimistic. Xiao Hua smiled and said, if there were any clues in Long Su, why would Ao Jia let you be the bait? Unfortunately, Ao Jia underestimated this person. He didn't expect dozens of dragons to appear at once. If it wasn't for me, you would have been eaten by them. Damn it. Ao Sheng said angrily, when I return to Dragon Island, I will definitely expose that bastard's face. What right do you have? Xiao Hua said coldly, even Ao Jia doesn't dare to show his cards. What right do you have? I. Ao Sheng heard and couldn't help but feel dejected. Ao Zhan smiled and said, little elder, don't worry. Don't you still have me? Even if I'm not strong enough, there's still Dragon Master Xiao. I feel useless. Ao Sheng raised his head painfully and said, I want to be like Yuanya and step on that piece of shit under my feet to vent my anger. Ao Zhan shrugged and expressed his helplessness. On the path of strength, if it wasn't hard work, then it was opportunity. Ao Zhan obtained the inheritance of the dragons in the relic realm. That was an opportunity. But even if there was an opportunity, he still had to work hard. He wanted to stand above the dragon palace. It wasn't something that could be done in a short time, let alone Ao Sheng. I'm back. Yuanya flew to side. There wasn't much of a smile on his face. He only said one sentence and didn't ask how Dai came out of Shenhua continent. Then, he looked at Goldie and Blackie and said, "You two are back too. Look, look." Goldie said unhappily, "We haven't seen each other for hundreds of years, and he still doesn't look happy. What's so good about him?" "Sister, don't want him. I'll find you a better one. Brother Lu isn't enough, but there's still Wang Bianfei. That little guy is outstanding. He must be a handsome young master now." Yuanya was stunned. He glanced at Goldie but didn't react. Dyer smiled and ignored Goldie. She patted his head and said to Yuanya, "You're not hurt, are you?" "No." Yuanya answered with one word. "Good." Dyer also answered with one word. Both of their eyes were full of smiles. Sigh, there's no other way. Seeing that the two of them were silent, Goldie was also helpless. He cried out, "A fresh flower stuck in cow dung. A tortoise and a mung bean, they're compatible," Blackie said from the side. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at Ao Sheng, who was in pain. He muttered in his heart. Ao Sheng was the current dragon body of the dragon god of the primitive continent. Xiaohua obtained the dragon bones and other things left behind by the dragon god in the primitive continent. These things could be said to be Ao Sheng's, but they could also be said to not be Ao Sheng's. After all, it had been 2 lives. However, Ao Sheng was very affectionate. When he heard that Xiaohua was suppressed by Monster King by Qingyu, he ignored his own safety and came to rescue him. Of course, Ao Jia calculated it. If not for Ao Sheng's stubbornness, how could Ao Jia bear to let Ao Sheng take the risk? Based on Ao Sheng's affection, Xiaohua couldn't say that the dragon bones and other things had nothing to do with Ao Sheng. But the problem was that the things left behind by the dragon god were useful to Daoist Yun. The dragon god had a dispute with Jiang Luer's Maitreya Buddha in his previous life. Xiaohua didn't know what this dispute was, and he didn't have the right to know. But Xiaohua had the right to decide what the dragon god left behind. Now that Jiang Luer had abandoned the position of Buddha Lord in her previous life, it was even more impossible for Xiaohua to give all of the dragon god's things to Ao Sheng. Besides, even if Xiaohua wanted to give everything to Ao Sheng now, with Ao Sheng's current cultivation and dragon body, it was impossible for him to get it. These things were enough to make all the dragons go crazy. They would only make Ao Sheng die faster. Since he had made his decision, Xiaohua smiled and asked, "Ao Sheng, I have an idea. Are you willing to accept it?" "Huh, I already knew that Dragon Master had an idea." Tell me. When Ao Sheng heard this, the pain on his face disappeared like the wind blowing away the clouds. Damn it. Xiaohua touched his nose and smiled bitterly. I seem to have fallen into your trap. Hee hee. Ao Sheng glanced at Ao Zhan and said, Ao Zhan was just an Eastern Sea Dragon Guard before, but now he is so powerful. I asked him many times, but he refused to say anything. But do I still have to ask? Even a blind person can see that it is related to Dragon Master. Compared to 200 years ago, Dragon Master's strength is even more different. If I don't look for Dragon Master, who else can I look for? You are my Dragon Clan's Dragon Master. Ao Zhan also smiled and said, Spiritual Master, Ao Sheng is definitely a Dragon Clan member who is very affectionate. It is rare in my Dragon Clan. He is also very concerned about you. If you can help him, please do your best to help him. How can I not know about his cunning mind? Xiaohua smiled and said, Back then in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm, I already knew. Hee hee. Hearing Xiaohua mention the Stacked Jade Legacy realm, Ao Sheng's heart calmed down. He knew that Xiaohua had already agreed. But Xiaohua's face turned serious and said, You have to make a dragon oath in front of me first. No problem. Ao Sheng said without hesitation, I will never betray Dragon Master in this life. I will not betray Dragon Island. I will. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.